The instant Megan Anthony's gaze snagged on the code cascading across Hajin Kim's screen, three things snapped into sharp focus. She understood it. She shouldn't have looked. And her life had irrevocably veered onto a new, unknown course. It was 11 at night in his sprawling Philadelphia mansion. Soft, amber light painted the mahogany and leather with warm strokes, the shadows seeming to possess a life of their own, subtly shifting and breathing. Megan had been employed as a cleaner here for 6 months, a silent specter in a black uniform, gliding through the rooms, meticulously polishing glass, carefully dusting shelves, existing in that liminal, invisible space reserved for those in service. But tonight, an undeniable force pulled her toward his desk, toward the mesmerizing glow of the screen. Lines of code streamed down like a digital waterfall, each string pulsing with an almost palpable intelligence, stealing the air from her lungs. She recognized what she was seeing. Her MIT dropout brain, the one she had deliberately suppressed beneath the crushing weight of student loan debt and her mother's ever-mounting medical bills, registered it instantly. Polymorphic encryption, military-grade architecture. It's not active yet, she observed internally, a slow realization dawning. The code was already embedded deep within the hospital networks, slumbering dormant. It required a biometric trigger to awaken. Whoever had engineered this monstrosity had made someone's very heartbeat the kill switch. Pure, lethal intent wrapped in an elegant, almost artistic syntax. Her fingers instinctively hovered over the keyboard, absorbing the information without physically touching it, her mind already mapping the complex structure. Then she sensed him. The very air in the room shifted, thickening. The sharp, distinctive aroma of cedar and gunpowder, both familiar and deeply unsettling. Heat radiated from behind her, close enough that she could feel the contained, almost predatory power emanating from his stillness. You read code. It wasn't a question, but a statement, delivered in a voice like silk interwoven with razor wire, each syllable weighted by the unmistakable cadence of his Korean accent. Megan's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. She turned slowly, deliberately. Hajin Kim stood less than a foot away, towering over her, devastatingly composed in a black suit that likely cost more than her mother's ever-increasing hospital bills. His dark eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that felt like being stripped bare, dissected under a harsh light, seen in ways that simultaneously terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. She should have immediately looked away, offered a hasty apology, retreated, played the role of the startled, frightened maid. Instead, she met his gaze head-on, then glanced at the screen behind him. It's a polymorphic virus. She heard herself whisper, the words barely audible. Whoever wrote this wants to kill people. Thousands of them. Something flickered across his face, an unreadable expression. Surprise? Recognition? His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Then his hand moved, not with violence, but with deliberate intent, closing firmly around her wrist. The touch burned like a brand. I have 48 hours, Hajin said, his grip unyielding, possessive, to decrypt that code or my empire burns. My enemies will launch it and frame me for mass murder. For months, I thought the coder behind this virus was a ghost. He continued, his voice low and dangerous. Then one of my men traced the architecture to a forgotten thesis on cryptographic warfare, written by a student named Megan Anthony. Her pulse faltered, skipped a beat. You found me through my research. I found you because I was hunting your father. I didn't realize the connection until after I'd already bought your mother's debt. When I learned who you were, I made sure you'd end up here. He stepped closer, backing her against the desk, effectively caging her with his sheer presence. Can you break it? Megan's pulse thundered in her ears, drowning out the ambient sounds of the mansion. Up close, he was even more devastating. His sharp features carved from stone and shadow, lips that hinted at things she had only dared to imagine in the secret darkness of her thoughts, and eyes that seemed to pierce straight through every defense she had painstakingly erected over the years. I don't know, she managed to stammer, the words weak and unconvincing even to her own ears. Wrong answer. He spun her chair around, positioning her directly in front of the screen, his hands bracketing her on either side of the keyboard, trapping her. She could feel his breath against her neck, controlled and dangerously warm. "Let me rephrase," he murmured, his voice dropping to a level that felt both intimate and terrifying. "You will break it. And until you do, every breath you take, every thought in that brilliant mind, every single second of your existence belongs to me." His thumb found her pulse point, pressing gently against the frantic rhythm, as if taking the measure of her very life force. "Do we have an understanding, Megan Anthony?" Her name on his lips sent a jolt of pure electricity down her spine. He knew her name. He had always known her name. "What if I refuse?" The question emerged shakier than she had intended, but she forced herself to meet his gaze in the reflection of the darkened screen. Hadjian's smile was slow, predatory, devastatingly beautiful. "Then I make a phone call, and your mother's ventilator stops working." His tone remained conversational, almost gentle, belying the threat beneath. "I watch you break, then I kill you, but not before I make you understand exactly what you threw away." He leaned in closer, his lips brushing the delicate shell of her ear. "Or maybe I'll make you beg me to keep you anyway." Megan's breath hitched in her throat. Fear, and something darker, something she didn't dare to name, coiled tight in her stomach, a dangerous serpent awakening. She should be screaming, fighting, running for her life, but her body had gone completely still, hyper-aware of every point where his presence invaded her personal space, every nerve ending alive with a terrible, thrilling anticipation. "I'll do it," she whispered, the words forced out. "I know you will, precious girl." He released her then, stepping back with the casual grace of a man who had never once doubted the outcome. He adjusted his cufflinks, perfectly composed and utterly lethal, as if he hadn't just casually threatened murder and seduction in the same breath. 48 hours. You work here, sleep here, eat when I tell you. My men will watch you and they'll teach you basic self-defense." He added almost as an afterthought. "If you're smart enough to decrypt warfare code, you should know how to survive a real one." She hadn't believed him then. Later, she would be profoundly grateful that she had listened. He paused at the door, turning back with that devastating smile that could melt glaciers. "And Megan, don't even think about running." His eyes held hers, dark and absolute, promising retribution. "I always catch what's mine." The door closed with a soft click that echoed in the tense silence like the sound of a cell locking. Megan stared at the screen, at the insidious code that had just irrevocably altered the trajectory of her entire existence. Her hands trembled as she reached for the keyboard. Outside the study, she could hear the soft tread of footsteps, guards taking their positions, watchers ensuring she remained exactly where Hadjian wanted her. She had walked into this mansion 6 months ago as a nameless, invisible maid, drowning in debt and utterly desperate. Now, she sat in a devil's chair, surrounded by his amber light and leather-bound danger. Her brilliant mind the only thing standing between salvation and utter destruction. And the worst part, the part that made shame burn hot in her chest, was that a part of her desperately wanted to see what would happen if she stayed. Part of her actually wanted him to collect. Welcome back, my daring hearts and dangerous minds. Tonight's story isn't about good versus evil. It's about the treacherous, undefined space in between, where love wears a gun and loyalty tastes like blood. Before we begin, hit subscribe, tap like, and tell me where you're tuning in from. Every whisper, every view, every act of support keeps these forbidden worlds alive. Now, let's descend together into the Mansion of Secrets, where a black maid meets a Korean king of crime, and neither will ever leave unchanged. They moved her at dawn. Megan hadn't slept. It felt impossible to believe that only 30 hours had elapsed since she had reluctantly agreed to decrypt the deadly code. Within the confines of Hadjian's penthouse, time didn't flow in the same linear fashion as it did in the real world. It looped, twisted, devoured itself until day and night blurred into a single relentless pressure. How could she possibly succeed? With the oppressive weight of the 48-hour deadline pressing against her chest like a physical burden, she had spent the entire night staring at the screen, her mind relentlessly racing through complex encryption patterns while her body remained in a state of hyper-awareness, acutely conscious of the guard station just outside the study door. When Hajan's right-hand man appeared, she nearly jumped out of the chair, her nerves stretched to the breaking point. "Come," he said simply, his tone brooking no argument. Main Sok was shorter than Hajan, but possessed a build that suggested violence compressed into a deceptively tailored suit. His face was utterly devoid of expression, revealing no hint of mercy, only cold, calculated efficiency. The jagged scar that bisected his left eyebrow and extended down to his jawline hinted at stories he would never speak aloud. He gestured toward the door, and Megan stood on trembling legs, her muscles protesting the hours of forced stillness. "Where are we going?" "You work upstairs now. Boss's orders." They rode the private elevator in a heavy, suffocating silence, the kind that made her skin prickle with a heightened awareness. Jay stood ramrod straight with his hands clasped formally in front of him, his eyes fixed forward, but she felt his gaze on her nonetheless, assessing, cataloging, dissecting her with an almost clinical detachment. She noticed the subtle bulge of a weapon concealed beneath his jacket, the way his stance never fully relaxed, the minute adjustments he made to subtly keep her within his peripheral vision at all times. The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse. Megan stepped out and promptly forgot how to breathe. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around the entire expansive space, revealing the glittering tapestry of Philadelphia's skyline, painted in the soft, burnished hues of morning gold. Marble stretched beneath her feet, its veins shot through with bronze that caught the light like frozen rivers, adding to the sense of opulent grandeur. The furniture looked almost sculptural, minimalist in design, and undeniably expensive in that understated way that whispered of old money and newly acquired power. Everything gleamed, from the polished glass surfaces to the brushed chrome accents, to the grand piano positioned in the corner that looked as though it had never been played. Abstract art she vaguely recognized from museum catalogs hung on the walls, a Rothko, a Basquiat, priceless pieces worth millions displayed like casual decorations. It was the most beautiful prison she had ever seen. "Your room." Jay pointed down a hallway, his expression unwavering. She found herself standing in a suite that could have comfortably housed 3 families. A king-sized bed was draped in charcoal silk, its surface smooth and inviting. The bathroom featured a soaking tub carved from a single block of black stone, sleek and modern. A walk-in closet was already filled with clothes in her precise size, the tags still attached, each piece carefully selected, designer labels she had only ever seen gracing the pages of glossy magazines. Stella McCartney, Prada, The Row. Every garment was rendered in dark, flattering colors that would perfectly complement her skin tone. He had been meticulously planning this, studying her, noting her measurements, anticipating her preferences, discerning her style. "Workstation is through there." Jay indicated another door with a curt nod. "Kitchen access is at the end of the hall. You don't leave this floor without permission." "What if there's a fire?" His expression didn't change, remaining cold and indifferent. "Then you burn." He left her standing there, alone and disoriented. She heard the soft electronic beep of a lock engaging, sealing her in. She tried the door handle, finding it solid, immovable, secured by biometric technology. Of course. Megan walked to the window and pressed her forehead against the cool glass, seeking some semblance of grounding. Below, the city moved with oblivious freedom, teeming with cars, people, and lives that didn't belong to ruthless Korean mafia bosses who spoke in veiled threats and touched you like they owned your very pulse. Her reflection stared back at her, dark-skinned and stark against the brightening morning light. She looked small here, almost swallowed by a suffocating luxury that felt like quicksand. But she refused to look away, instead studying her own image, searching for any visible signs of the woman she had been yesterday versus the woman she was rapidly becoming. The workstation turned out to be a tech enthusiast's ultimate fantasy. 3 curved monitors were arranged in perfect ergonomic alignment, their surfaces displaying the lines of code. A custom mechanical keyboard boasted Cherry MX switches, the expensive kind she had only ever dreamed about. The processing power was so advanced it made her old laptop seem like a mere calculator by comparison. Dual GPUs, 64 gigabytes of RAM. Hajin had constructed a veritable command center worthy of NSA-level operations. She should have been grateful, humbled by the sheer excess of it all. Instead, she felt the cage closing in, tightening its grip around her. The code awaited her on the main screen, exactly where she had left it. Megan settled into the leather chair, its butter-soft surface molding to her body, and resolutely forced her mind to focus, to block out the distractions and the fear. Polymorphic encryption. Self-modifying. Every time the virus executed, it rewrote its own internal structure to evade detection. Brilliant and horrifying in equal measure. Her fingers instinctively found the keyboard, dancing across the keys. Within an hour, she had managed to isolate the first layer of encryption. The virus employed a rotating cipher that changed every 64 iterations, but the rotation pattern adhered to a predictable mathematical sequence. Fibonacci modified. Whoever had engineered this had received extensive training, possessed a sophisticated intellect, and harbored an undeniable ego. She began constructing the decryption algorithm, losing herself in the pure, unadulterated logic of it all. Code didn't lie. Code didn't threaten your mother. Code was simply truth rendered in syntax. But even as she worked, a persistent part of her mind kept circling back to Hajin's earlier words. Every breath you take belongs to me. She hated that the mere thought of it sent a shiver tracing down her spine. 3 hours later, she had cracked the outer shell. The monitors flickered, and a torrent of new information flooded the screens. Not just code now, but intricate architecture diagrams, detailed network maps, specific target systems. And then, buried deep within the metadata, she found a digital signature so subtle that most people would have completely missed it. But Megan saw it, recognized it instantly. Her hands froze over the keyboard, her breath catching in her throat. The coding style, the variable naming conventions, the specific, almost idiosyncratic way comments were formatted, the abbreviated Latin phrases her father used to mutter almost unconsciously while he worked. Tempus fugit. Impressive. She spun the chair around abruptly, startled. Hajin stood in the doorway, leaning casually against the frame, his jacket gone, his shirt sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing a glimpse of tanned forearms. The morning light streamed through the window, catching the sharp angles of his face, softening nothing. She noticed details she had missed the previous night in the dim lighting of the study. The thin, almost imperceptible scar that traced along his left collarbone, visible through the open collar of his unbuttoned shirt, the undeniably expensive watch on his wrist, a Patek Philippe, probably worth more than her entire education combined, the way he held himself with the absolute, unwavering confidence of someone who had never once lost a fight. How long have you been watching? Long enough. He moved further into the room, and she felt her body respond against her will, every nerve ending suddenly on high alert. That scent again. Cedar and gunpowder, now mixed with something warmer, more human. Coffee. He had been awake as long as she had. The outer layer was simple pattern recognition, she managed to say, striving to keep her voice even and steady. The real work starts now. Tell me what you found. Megan pointed to the sprawling network map displayed on one of the monitors. This virus is designed to infiltrate hospital systems across the entire eastern seaboard. Once inside, it targets life support protocols. Ventilators, dialysis machines, anything keeping critically ill patients alive. Hajin's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, the only outward sign of his roiling emotions. It's not about money, she continued, pressing on. Whoever launches this wants mass casualties. They want you framed for domestic terrorism. The signature in the code is too obvious, too blatant. Like they want you to know who built it. Kevin. The name came out like a curse, a venomous hiss. My half-brother has always preferred spectacle to efficiency. He built his territory on fear and theater, while I built mine on meticulous calculation. His hand moved, reaching past her to point at something on the screen, and his arm brushed lightly against her shoulder. The touch was incidental, meaningless, but it sent a wave of unexpected heat cascading down her spine. She subtly shifted away, her body instinctively creating distance, even as a traitorous part of her wanted to lean in closer. I need more time to decode the activation sequence. You'll have it. But he didn't move, didn't step back. When did you eat last? I'm not hungry. That wasn't the question. Megan turned to face him fully, and the sudden movement brought them too close for comfort. She could see the fine grain of stubble shadowing his jaw, the exact shade of brown in his eyes, nearly black in the dim light of the workstation. Up close, she noticed the faint lines etched at the corners of his eyes, evidence of countless sleepless nights and relentless pressure. He was older than she had initially thought. Mid-30s, maybe old enough to have meticulously built an empire from the ground up, old enough to have personally killed those 17 men he had mentioned with such chilling detachment. Why do you care if I eat? Hadjin tilted his head slightly, studying her with that unnerving intensity that made her feel like a specimen under a microscope. Because you're valuable and I protect what's mine. I'm not yours, aren't you? His smile was slow, dangerous, revealing a hint of the predator beneath the polished surface. Tell me, Megan, who holds your mother's life in their hands? Who controls whether you leave this room? Who decides if you eat, sleep, breathe free air? If that's not ownership, what is? The words should have ignited a furious rage within her, a burning sense of injustice. Instead, they settled over her like an unwelcome truth she wasn't quite ready to acknowledge. Before she could formulate a response, he straightened up and walked toward the door. Jay will bring food in 20 minutes. Eat it. Your mind is brilliant, Megan, but brilliance needs fuel. He paused at the threshold, turning back to face her. Oh, and clever girl, the glass wall between your workstation and my office? It's one way. I've been watching you work since dawn. Watching you bite your lip when you concentrate. Watching you lean forward when you find something interesting. Watching the way your eyes light up when you solve a problem. Her breath caught in her throat, stealing the air from her lungs. I see everything you do, he said softly, his voice a low caress that sent shivers dancing across her skin. And I'm fascinated. The door closed silently behind him, and Megan sat frozen in the chair, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She turned slowly to look at the glass wall she had simply assumed was an element of the architectural design. From this side, it showed only her reflection, a woman with wide, apprehensive eyes and parted lips, looking far more shaken than she wanted to admit. But from his office, he had been studying her for hours, watching her work, observing every unconscious gesture, every subtle tick. The violation should have made her furious, triggered an explosion of righteous anger. Instead, something dark and unwanted coiled low in her belly, a confusing mix of emotions, an awareness that she was being truly seen, perhaps for the first time in her life, seen in ways she had never been seen before. Not as invisible help, not as a desperate daughter burdened by debt, but as something he found compelling enough to watch, to study, to understand. She looked at her reflection in the glass and barely recognized herself. Who was this woman who felt a strange thrill at the thought of being observed? Jay arrived exactly 20 minutes later with a loaded tray. Grilled salmon, quinoa salad, fresh fruit artfully arranged like a still life painting. The kind of meal that required genuine thought and care, not just mere sustenance. She noticed the subtle details. The salmon was prepared Korean style with gochugaru spice. The fruit included delicately sliced Asian pear. Everything had been chosen with a keen awareness of her culinary preferences, preferences she had never explicitly shared with anyone. How long had Hadjin been observing her, cataloging her every move? Eat, Jay said, setting the tray down with a practiced ease. Boss's orders. Then he added, in a quieter tone that sounded almost kind, a surprising departure from his usual demeanor. Don't test his patience. You won't like what happens when it runs out. Megan looked at the food, at the screens glowing with the menacing lines of lethal code, at the suffocating luxury that surrounded her like velvet-lined shackles. She picked up the fork, her hand trembling slightly. The first bite of salmon melted on her tongue, perfectly seasoned, an explosion of flavor. She chewed slowly, savoring every nuance. The subtle heat of the chili, the delicate sweetness of the glaze, the unmistakable care that had gone into its preparation. And she hated herself for how easily she obeyed, for her almost immediate capitulation. But she also noticed something else. She was genuinely hungry, ravenously so, actually. When had she last eaten a proper meal? Yesterday morning? The day before? As she ate, she caught herself glancing at the one-way glass, wondering if Hajin was watching her now, wondering what he saw, wondering why that particular thought made her pulse quicken instead of making her skin crawl with revulsion. This is Stockholm Syndrome, she told herself firmly, attempting to rationalize the confusing emotions swirling within her. You're traumatized, scared. Your body is simply confused. But the rationalization felt hollow, unconvincing. Because if this was trauma, why did her mind keep relentlessly returning to the precise moment when his hand had closed around her wrist, the burning heat of his touch? Why could she still vividly feel the warmth of his breath against her neck, sending shivers dancing down her spine? Why did she find herself wanting him to come back, to disrupt the suffocating silence with his unnerving presence? She finished the meal in silence, then resolutely returned to the code with a renewed focus, determined to regain control. If she couldn't effectively control her own thoughts and emotions, at least she could exert some control over this. The intricate encryption patterns beckoned, and she dove in deep, desperate for the clarity and order that code invariably provided. Behind the one-way glass, Hajin watched her work and allowed himself a small, enigmatic smile. 26 hours remained when Megan found her father's ghost. She had been working through the night again, peeling back the layers of encryption with the precision of a skilled surgeon, dissecting the virus one subroutine at a time. Hajin had visited twice, bringing her coffee she hadn't specifically asked for, standing in the doorway in thoughtful silence while she worked, his very presence both a distraction and a strangely comforting reassurance. Now, at 3 o'clock in the morning, she stared at something that made absolutely no sense, a seemingly insignificant subroutine buried deep within the virus's core structure. The syntax was strangely familiar in a way that made her skin prickle with a sudden, unnerving awareness. Each line had been written with specific quirks that were as uniquely identifiable as fingerprints. Double spacing after conditional statements, variable names using Greek letters, comments written in abbreviated Latin. Tempest fugit. Time flies. Ars longa, vita brevis. Art is long, life is short. Her father's voice echoed in her memory, patient and warm, patiently teaching her to code on that ancient, clunky desktop computer. Always comment your code, Maggie. For future you will present you for it. Her hands began to tremble uncontrollably. She pulled up the metadata, painstakingly tracing the code's origin through a labyrinthine network of proxies and false endpoints, following digital breadcrumbs that most people would never even see, let alone recognize. But her father had instilled in her a unique ability to look for the ghosts that programmers inevitably left behind in their machines. He had shown her how programmers unconsciously imprinted traces of themselves in their work, creating patterns as unique and identifiable as their own handwriting. The trail led her to a nondescript server farm in Virginia, NSA adjacent, shrouded in black-budget operations and clandestine activities. Her father was alive, and he had built the weapon that Hajin desperately needed her to defuse. Megan pushed back abruptly from the desk, her chest tight, her breath coming in shallow, ragged gasps. The room tilted precariously, and she gripped the chair arms tightly to steady herself, fighting off the rising tide of nausea. 12 long years of wondering if he was dead, if he had been murdered, if she had somehow failed him by not being enough to make him stay. And all along he had been alive, working, building weapons, consciously choosing to remain absent from her life. You found something. She jerked her head up, startled. Hajin stood in the doorway, dressed in dark slacks and a crisp white shirt unbuttoned at the collar, his usual armor momentarily shed. He looked both exhausted and hyper-alert in equal measure, a dangerous combination. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, stark evidence of countless nights spent managing a vast and complex empire. My father wrote this, she whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of shock and disbelief. Marcus Anthony. Every subroutine, every encryption layer. This is his work. Hajin didn't appear at all surprised. He walked purposefully into the room, and something in his carefully neutral expression, in the controlled stillness of his body, made the full, crushing weight of understanding crash over her like a wave of ice water. You knew. Her voice shook uncontrollably. You knew he wrote it. Yes. For how long? 3 weeks. Since Kevin sent me the first thread. Your father has been working for my brother for 6 months. Lee Sun-Min tracked his digital signature 2 days after we received the code. Megan stood, her legs unsteady beneath her. And you still brought me here? Still made me decode his work? Yes. The single word felt like a physical slap, delivered with brutal force. You used me. Her hands clenched into tight fists, her nails digging into her palms. You knew this whole time that decoding this would inevitably lead me back to him, and you used me anyway. Hajin's expression hardened, his features becoming sharp and unforgiving. No, Megan. I found you. What's the difference? He moved closer, and she backed up until the edge of the desk pressed against her spine, effectively trapping her. But he didn't stop, didn't give her the space she desperately needed, just crowded into her personal space with that overwhelming presence that seemed to steal the very air from her lungs. She could smell his cologne, a subtle, sophisticated scent, see the steady pulse point throbbing at his throat, feel the undeniable heat radiating from his body. The difference, he said quietly, his voice dangerously low, is that using you would mean I saw you as a mere tool, an expendable resource. Finding you means I saw you as the answer, the only solution. That's the same thing. It's not. His hand rose, and she flinched instinctively, but he only pointed at the screen behind her, his gaze unwavering. Kevin has been meticulously planning this for over a year. He hired your father specifically because Marcus Anthony is brilliant and because he knew that if I ever found out about the virus, if I ever needed someone capable of breaking his code, there was only one person in the entire world who could do it, his daughter. His daughter, she repeated numbly. Kevin wanted me to find you, wanted me to bring you into this elaborate game because either you decrypt the virus and save me, which means actively working against your own father, or you refuse to cooperate and thousands of innocent people die while I take the blame for it. Megan's mind raced, frantically trying to fit all the disparate pieces together, to make sense of the elaborate, deadly game unfolding around her. It's a trap. Either way, I lose. Either way, you were supposed to break. Hajin's hand moved again, this time settling on the desk beside her hip, effectively caging her without actually touching her. His presence a palpable force. But you're not breaking, are you, clever girl? You're solving it anyway, despite everything. Because you threatened my mother. Yes, at least I didn't lie about it. But there was something else in his eyes now. Something that looked almost like regret, admiration. She couldn't read him, and that made her feel more unsteady. Where is he? Her voice cracked. Where's my father now? Kevin keeps him in a private facility outside Philadelphia. Protected. Controlled. Your father builds weapons, and my brother provides everything he needs to forget why he's building them. Money. Absolution. Hajuin's eyes held hers. Your father has been running from his past for 12 years. Kevin offered him a way to disappear completely. New identity, unlimited resources. All he had to do was create something that would destroy me. And he did it. Bitterness flooded her throat. He chose to build this instead of coming home. People make choices based on what they can live with. Your father couldn't live with being Marcus Anthony anymore. So he became someone else. A monster like me. Hajuin's lips curved without humor. Yes, like me. But she heard something in his voice. A self-awareness that surprised her. He knew what he was. He didn't pretend otherwise. Megan stared at him. At this man who dragged her into darkness and forced her to confront truths she'd buried. Her father was alive. Her father had abandoned her by choice. Her father had built a weapon meant to kill thousands. And Hajuin had known all of it. I should hate you, she whispered. You should. He leaned in, his breath warm against her cheek. But you don't. Not entirely, because hating me would be simple, and nothing about this is simple anymore. His hand lifted, hovering near her face, asking permission without words. She should pull away, should slap him, scream, demand he take her home. Instead, she stayed frozen as his fingers brushed the curve of her jaw, featherlight, testing. But then something in her shifted, a resistance she hadn't known she was holding on to. She jerked back, putting space between them. No. Her voice came out stronger than she felt. You don't get to comfort me. You don't get to touch me like I'm something precious when you orchestrated all of this. Hajuin's hand lowered slowly, and for a moment, something flickered across his face. Disappointment. Respect. You're right, he said quietly. I don't get to comfort you. But Megan, I need you to understand something. What? Your father didn't just abandon you. He abandoned himself. The man you remember. The one who taught you to code. Who called you Meggie and made you hot chocolate while you debugged programs. He couldn't live with what the NSA made him do. The black ops he was part of. The people who died from weapons he designed. Megan's breath caught. She'd never known the details of her father's work. Just that he'd left and everything had fallen apart. Kevin offered him oblivion. Hajuin continued. A chance to never remember. Never face it. Just build and forget. Build and forget. Your father is a coward, Megan. But he's not heartless. He's just broken. That doesn't make it better. No. Hajuin stepped back finally, giving her the space she demanded. But it makes it true. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the penthouse's perfect temperature control. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to know what you're fighting. Not just the code, not just Kevin, but the ghost of who your father used to be. His eyes held hers with uncomfortable intensity. And because when we face him, and we will face him, I need you to be ready. Ready to choose. Choose what? Revenge or mercy? Rage or understanding? He walked toward the door, then paused. Both are valid. Both are yours to take, but you need to decide before that moment comes, or it will decide for you. He left her standing there, shaking with emotions she couldn't name. Megan looked at the code on the screen. Her father's work, elegant and deadly. Then she looked at her hands, at the fingers that had been trained by those same hands to see patterns, to think in logic, to build things that mattered. She'd thought finding her father would give her answers. Instead, it only gave her more questions and 26 hours to solve them all. She returned to her chair slowly, her mind spinning. But this time, when she started typing, she wasn't just decrypting code. She was preparing for a choice she didn't want to make. Hours passed. The sun rose outside the windows, painting Philadelphia in shades of gold and rose. Megan worked in silence, her fingers flying across the keyboard, her mind dissecting her father's architecture piece by piece. And she noticed something. The deeper she went, the more she saw him in the code. Little details, private jokes embedded in comments that only she would recognize. Variables named after books he'd read to her as a child. The variable Meg appeared 3 times in critical functions. He'd known she would find this. He'd known she would be the one to break it. He'd left her breadcrumbs. But to what end? Reconciliation, warning, apology? She couldn't tell. At 8 a.m. Hajuin returned with breakfast. This time he didn't speak. Just set down a tray with Korean breakfast foods. Rice, kimchi, jjigae, grilled mackerel, and turned to leave. Wait! Megan heard herself say. He stopped, not looking back. The code, she said slowly. My father left traces. Messages, maybe? Things only I would see. Hajuin's expression sharpened. What kind of messages? I don't know yet, but they're there. She met his eyes. He knew I would be the one to find this. He prepared for it. That changes things. How? It means he's not just a coward. Hajuin's voice went cold. It means he's playing both sides. Kevin thinks he has your father's loyalty, but Marcus is hedging his bets. You think he wants me to find him? I think he wants you to save him. Hajuin's smile was sharp, dangerous. And that clever girl is a weakness we can exploit. Megan stared at him, at the calculation in his eyes, and felt something in her chest go tight. Her father was alive but broken. Hajuin was dangerous but honest. And she was caught between them, holding the key to everyone's survival. Eat, Hajuin said softly, his voice gentler now. Then rest. You'll need your strength for what comes next. This time she didn't argue. She ate in silence, tasting nothing, her mind already 3 moves ahead. And when Hajuin returned an hour later, settling into the chair beside her to work on his own laptop, she didn't tell him to leave because maybe, just maybe, being seen by a monster wasn't the worst thing that could happen. Maybe it was the only thing keeping her sane. Hajuin started testing her on the second day. Small things at first. He'd enter her workstation while she was deep in code, stand close enough that she felt his presence like static electricity, and wait, watching, silent. She'd force herself to keep typing, to ignore the way her body responded to his proximity, the way her skin prickled with awareness when he shifted his weight or breathed. He never touched her. That would have been easier to fight. Instead, he invaded her space with nothing but presence, testing how long she could pretend he wasn't there. She usually lasted 4 minutes before her concentration shattered. But today she was determined to last longer. The code sprawled across her screens, polymorphic layers within layers. Her father's architecture revealing itself in fractal complexity. She was close to something. She could feel it, a pattern emerging from the chaos. Hajuin entered at minute 2. She kept typing, her jaw set, refusing to acknowledge him. He moved to stand directly behind her chair. Still she typed. His hand settled on the back of her chair, close enough that she could feel the heat of it near her shoulder, but not touching. Her fingers stuttered on the keyboard. You're aware of me, he observed, voice low. I'm trying to work and failing. Your error rate increased the moment I walked in. She could hear the smile in his voice. Line 37. You wrote VOD instead of void. Line 41. Missing semicolon. Line 43. I get it. She spun the chair around, forcing him to step back. You're distracting me intentionally. Why? Hajuin crouched down, bringing himself to her eye level. And the movement was predatory grace. Because I want to see how long before you stop pretending. Pretending what? That you're unaffected? His eyes held hers with uncomfortable intensity. That you don't think about me. That you haven't noticed the way I watch you. I noticed. It's creepy. Is it? He tilted his head. Then why haven't you asked me to stop? Because she didn't want him to. The admission burned in her throat, but she wouldn't give him the satisfaction. Instead, she said, because I can't make you do anything. You own this cage. Hajuin's smile turned knowing. But you can ask and I would listen. I've listened to everything you've said, haven't I? When you asked for more time, I gave it. When you needed space, I provided it. When you demanded to know about your father, I told you the truth. He had. She couldn't deny that. So ask me, he continued softly. Ask me to leave you alone. Ask me to stop watching you work. Ask me to stop bringing you food you didn't request, prepared the way you like it. Ask me to stop caring if you're sleeping, eating, taking care of yourself. Megan opened her mouth, then closed it because she realized with growing horror that she didn't want to ask. She wanted him to keep watching, keep caring, keep seeing her as something more than invisible help. The realization made her feel sick. I can't, she whispered. Can't or won't. Both. She looked away, unable to hold his gaze. I don't know what's real anymore. Is this Stockholm Syndrome? Trauma bonding? Am I just so desperate for someone to see me that I'm confusing coercion with care? Hajuin was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood and she thought he'd leave. Instead, he pulled the second chair closer and sat, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. Let me tell you what's real, he said, his voice stripped of its usual command. 3 years ago, I found your post on a cryptography forum. You'd solved a problem that had stumped professional security experts for months. Your solution was elegant, innovative, and you posted it anonymously with no expectation of recognition, just sharing brilliance because you could. He paused, and she found herself looking at him despite herself. I tracked you down. Watched you work 3 jobs while taking care of your mother. Watched you solve coding problems on library computers because you couldn't afford your own equipment. Watched you dim your light because the world told you to be grateful for scraps. That's stalking. Yes, he didn't deny it. But it's also the moment I realized I'd spent my entire life surrounded by people who wanted something from me. Power, money, protection. And none of them saw me either. I was just a resource, just like you were just invisible. Megan's breath caught at the vulnerability in his voice. So I made a choice, Hajuin continued. A terrible, selfish, manipulative choice. I brought you into my world not just because I needed you, but because I wanted to see what would happen if someone like you was finally given everything you deserved. Resources, challenge, recognition. You can't force recognition on someone. No. But I could create the circumstances where you'd have no choice but to show the world who you really are. His eyes met hers. And I was right, wasn't I? Look at what you've done in 30 hours. You're breaking encryption that defeated my entire team. You're outthinking your father. You're becoming exactly who you were always meant to be. At what cost? Her voice shook. My freedom, my sanity, my ability to trust my own feelings. Yes, he didn't soften it. The cost is steep. And I made that choice for you, which was wrong. But Megan, would you have chosen this yourself? Would you have ever believed you deserved more than survival? The question hit like a physical blow because the answer was no. She would have kept drowning, kept sacrificing, kept making herself small until there was nothing left. That doesn't make what you did right. I know. Hajuin's voice was quiet, but it makes it true. And now you have to decide. Do you hate me for giving you no choice? Or do you thank me for forcing you to choose yourself? That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair. He stood, giving her space again. But it's honest. I'm obsessed with you, Megan. I've been obsessed since that first forum post. And yes, I've done terrible things to bring you here. But I've also done something no one else in your life has ever done. What? I've made you essential. He walked to the door, then looked back. And once you feel essential, you can never go back to invisible. That's the real trap. Not the threats, not the locked doors, but knowing what it feels like to matter. He left her with that truth hanging in the air. Megan sat in silence for a long time. Her hands shaking, her mind spinning. He was right. She hated that he was right. For 30 hours, she'd been the most important person in this building. Her mind mattered. Her choices mattered. She mattered. And the thought of going back to cleaning floors and being unseen felt like suffocation. She returned to the code with trembling fingers, but her heart wasn't in it. Instead, she found herself thinking about Hajuin's words, about obsession and recognition, about the terrible, selfish choice he'd made, about the fact that she hadn't asked him to stop. Hours passed. Evening fell over Philadelphia. She worked mechanically, making progress but feeling distant from it all. Then he returned. Not with food or coffee, but with a small box wrapped in black paper. "What is this?" she asked wearily. "Open it." Inside, she found a fountain pen. Vintage, beautiful, the kind of instrument that made writing feel important. "My father gave me this when I was 12, Hajuin said quietly. "The day he told me I would inherit his empire." He said, "Power is nothing without the ability to write your own story." Megan stared at the pen, at this piece of his history offered without explanation. "Why are you giving this to me?" "Because you're writing a new story now. One where you're not defined by debt or duty or other people's expectations." He met her eyes. "And I want you to have something that matters to me. So you know this isn't just about using you. It's about seeing you." She picked up the pen carefully, feeling the weight of it. The silver was worn smooth in places where his fingers had gripped it. There were tiny engravings in Korean characters along the barrel. "What does this say?" "Those who carry dragons must learn to breathe fire." Hajuin's smile was slight. "My father believed in dragons. In monsters who chose to be more than their nature allowed." "And you?" Her voice came out softer than she intended. "Do you believe in dragons?" "I believe in you." He said it simply, without performance, which is more terrifying than believing in dragons. Something in Megan's chest cracked at the honesty in his voice. She wanted to throw the pen back at him, wanted to scream that gifts didn't erase manipulation, that pretty words didn't change the cage, but she also wanted to keep it. Keep this piece of him. Keep this evidence that he saw her as more than a tool. I don't forgive you, she said finally. I know. And I don't trust you. I know that too. But I also don't want to be invisible anymore. The admission felt like exposing a wound. And I hate that you're the one who made me see that. Ha-Jun's expression softened into something that looked almost like pain. Then hate me, but don't go back to being unseen. Promise me that, at least. Why does my promise matter to you? Because in 3 years of watching you, I never saw you make a promise you didn't keep. He moved closer, and this time she didn't retreat. You're loyal to everyone except yourself. Your mother, your father's memory, even your employers who barely knew your name. But Megan, be loyal to your own potential. Just this once. And if that means leaving me when this is over, then leave. His voice went rough. But leave as someone who knows her worth. Leave as someone who will never settle for invisible again. That's all I want. For you to be free, even if that freedom takes you away from me. The vulnerability in his words made her chest tight. This man who commanded empires, who killed without hesitation, who manipulated her into his world. He was asking for nothing, just offering her permission to become. It was the kindest cruelty anyone had ever shown her. I need to work, she said, her voice unsteady. I know. He stepped back. But Megan, keep the pen. Even if you throw everything else away, keep that because it's the first thing anyone's given you that says you deserve beautiful things. He left before she could respond. Megan sat holding the pen, feeling the weight of silver and history and impossible choices. Then she set it carefully beside her keyboard and returned to the code. But throughout the night, she found her eyes drifting to it. This beautiful, terrible gift that meant more than it should. And when she finally cracked the next encryption layer at 3 a.m., she used that pen to take notes on paper the old-fashioned way, the way her father had taught her. The ink flowed smooth as silk, and every word felt important. Maybe that was the real trap. Not the locked doors or the threats, but learning that she deserved beautiful things and wanting more. The truth arrived at hour 36. Delivered in a manila folder that Jay sat on her desk without ceremony. Megan was deep in the virus's final encryption layer. Her mind splintered across 3 monitors when the folder's presence finally registered. She glanced at Jay. What is this? Boss said you'd want to see it. His expression was neutral, but something in his eyes looked almost sympathetic. He told me to tell you, no more secrets, even the ones that hurt. Her stomach tightened. Nothing Ha-Jun gave her was ever simple. Inside the folder, financial records. Her mother's hospital bills dating back 14 months. Each one stamped with the same acquisition notice. Debt purchased by Elysian Holdings, a shell company. She traced the ownership through 3 layers of corporate structure until she found the name at the top. Ha-Jun Kim. The dates made her chest constrict. He'd bought her mother's debt 4 months before Megan had applied for the maid position. 4 months before she'd ever walked through his mansion's doors. Her hands started shaking beneath the financial records, surveillance photos. Her leaving her apartment, her at the hospital holding her mother's hand, her at the library hunched over a laptop working on code she couldn't afford to run on better equipment. Her standing outside that bakery window staring at cakes she'd never buy. Photo after photo, time-stamped over 18 months. He'd been watching her long before he'd ever spoken her name. But it was the 3rd section that made her stop breathing. Employment records. The maid position at his mansion created specifically for her. Requirements that matched her exact qualifications. Technology background. Security clearance from her MIT days. Experience with discretion. She'd worked for 3 wealthy families before this. The job posting had never been real. It had been bait. But beneath that, something else. Records of other candidates Ha-Jun had interviewed and rejected. Women with better references, more experience, perfect backgrounds. He'd rejected them all because they weren't her. And at the bottom of the folder, handwritten notes in Korean. She couldn't read them, but she recognized Ha-Jun's handwriting from the memos she'd seen on his desk. She photographed the page with her phone and ran it through translation software. Subject demonstrates exceptional resilience. Works 16-hour days without complaint. Prioritizes mother's care over own welfare. Coding ability vastly exceeds current employment. MIT dropout due to financial hardship, not academic failure. GPA 3.97 at time of departure. Recommendation: accelerate debt acquisition timeline. Create employment opportunity that provides financial stability while allowing continued surveillance. Subject must not suspect manipulation. Pride would trigger rejection. Note: Chun Wei Long suggests more aggressive approach. Rejected. Subject responds to perceived autonomy, not force. Must believe choice is hers. Week 34. Subject stopped at bakery window again. Same behavior. Stairs. Does not enter. Recommend small luxury offerings once employment secured to establish reward pattern. The clinical dissection of her life, her patterns, her psychology laid out in neat handwritten observations. Megan stood, the folder falling from numb fingers, papers scattered across the marble like evidence of a crime she'd been too blind to see. She walked straight to Hajuin's office without knocking. He looked up from his desk, unsurprised. He'd been expecting this. "You've been stalking me." Her voice came out steady despite the rage trembling through her limbs. "For over a year you bought my mother's debt, created a fake job, manipulated me into your house. You studied me like I was an experiment." Hajuin set down his pen with careful precision. "Yes, just yes. No apologies, no excuses. You orchestrated everything. My entire employment, my servitude. You owned me before I ever walked through your door." "I didn't know who you were when I bought the debt," he said quietly. "But once I did, I couldn't stop. I wanted to see if the woman behind that code was as brilliant and as dangerous as her father. I gave you opportunity. You gave me access to my mother's care. I gave you a chance to be seen. By stalking me, by cataloging my behavior like I was some kind of lab rat." She moved closer, her hands clenched into fists. "You had someone analyze my psychology. You ran surveillance for 18 months. You manipulated every single aspect of bringing me here." "Yes." He moved around the desk, and she backed toward the door. "Because watching you struggle was unbearable. And you were too proud to accept help any other way. You don't get to make that choice for me. Someone had to." His control finally cracked. Emotion bleeding through. "You were drowning, Megan. Working 3 jobs, sleeping 4 hours a night, eating 1 meal a day. I watched you collapse in that hospital corridor and get back up like nothing happened. Watched you code solutions to problems that companies would have paid millions for, then delete them because you had no way to monetize your brilliance without capital you'd never have. That was my life, my choice. Your death." He moved closer and she held her ground this time. "You would have worked yourself into the ground within a year. Heart attack, stress-induced stroke, malnutrition. I ran the probabilities, Megan. I had Chun Wei Long build predictive models based on your health patterns, work schedule, financial trajectory. You had 18 months before complete." He didn't try to deny any of it. However, what flickered in his gaze now held a strange mix of regret and even admiration. She was having trouble deciphering him, and that only added to the feeling of uncertainty churning inside her. "Where is he?" Her voice cracked under the strain. "Where's my father right now?" "Kevin's got him tucked away in some private facility outside of Philadelphia, where he's safe and sound, and more importantly, under control. Your dad's building weapons, and my brother is making sure he's got everything he needs to conveniently forget why he's building them. We're talking money, and a whole lot of it. We're also talking about absolution, which is something no one can ever really give you." Hajuin's dark eyes locked onto hers, holding her captive. "Your father's been running from his past life for the past 12 years. Kevin offered him a clean slate, a way to disappear off the face of the earth. New identity, unlimited resources. All he had to do was create something that would completely and utterly destroy me. And damn it, he did it." A bitter taste rose in her throat, choking her. "He chose to build something like this instead of coming home to us? People make choices based on what they can actually live with, or what they think they can live with. Your father couldn't stand being Marcus Anthony anymore, so he decided to become somebody else entirely. A monster just like me." A humorless curve touched Hajuin's lips, mocking even himself. "Yeah, just like me. But she caught something underneath the surface of his words, a flicker of self-awareness that genuinely surprised her. He seemed to know exactly what he was. He wasn't pretending to be anything else. Megan stared at him, at this man who'd yanked her down into the darkness and forced her to face some ugly truths she tried to bury deep. Her father was alive. Her father had walked away from her by choice, not circumstance. Her father had designed and built a weapon that was meant to kill thousands of people. And Hajuin had known about all of it. "I should hate you for this," she whispered, the words barely audible. "You probably should." He leaned slightly closer, his breath warm against her cheek. "But you don't. Not entirely, anyway. Because hating me would be the easy way out, and nothing about any of this is easy anymore, is it?" His hand slowly rose, hovering close to her face, as if asking permission without saying a word. She should have recoiled, should have slapped him across the face, screamed at him, demanded that he take her back home, away from all of this. But instead, she found herself frozen in place as his fingertips gently brushed along the curve of her jaw. A featherlight, tentative touch. But something inside her abruptly shifted. A last vestige of resistance she hadn't even realized she'd been clinging to. She jerked away, putting some much-needed space between them. "No." Her voice came out stronger than she felt inside. "You don't get to offer me comfort. You don't get to touch me like I'm something precious when you're the one who orchestrated all of this." Hajuin's hand slowly lowered back to his side. And for just a fleeting moment, she thought she saw something flicker across his face. Something that resembled both disappointment and, strangely enough, respect. "You're absolutely right," he said quietly. "I don't get to comfort you. But Megan, I need you to understand something very important here." "What is it?" "Your father didn't just abandon you, Megan. He abandoned himself. He abandoned the man you remember, the one who taught you how to code, the one who used to call you Meggie and make you hot chocolate while you were debugging your programs. He couldn't go on living with what the NSA forced him to do, with the Black Ops missions he was a part of, the people who died because of the weapons he designed." Megan's breath caught in her throat, a sharp, painful sting. She'd never really known the specifics of her father's job, only that he'd left, and everything had spiraled downward from there. Kevin offered him oblivion. Hajuin continued relentlessly. A chance to forget everything, to never have to face it. Just build and forget. Build and forget. Your father is a coward, Megan. But he's not a completely heartless one, believe it or not. He's just broken. That doesn't make any of this better. No, it doesn't. Hajuin finally stepped back, giving her the space she demanded. The space he knew she desperately needed. But it makes it the truth. She instinctively wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly feeling cold despite the penthouse's otherwise perfect temperature control. "Why are you telling me all this, anyway? What's the catch?" "Because you need to know what you're fighting here, Megan. Not just the code, not just Kevin, but the ghost of who your father used to be." His dark eyes held hers with an uncomfortable intensity. "And because when we inevitably face him, and we will face him, I need you to be ready. Ready to make a choice. Choose what, exactly? Revenge or mercy? Rage or understanding?" He turned and started walking toward the door, then paused, glancing back at her. "Both are valid choices and both are yours to take, Megan. But you need to decide which one you're going to choose before that moment comes, or else it'll decide for you." And with that, he left her standing there, shaking with a confusing mix of emotions she couldn't even begin to name. Megan looked back down at the code flickering on the screen, the culmination of her father's work, so elegant, yet so deadly. Then she looked down at her own hands, at the fingers that had been painstakingly trained by those very same hands to recognize patterns, to think in logic, to build things that actually mattered. She'd thought that finding her father would finally give her some answers, but all it had done was leave her with even more questions, and only 26 hours to try and solve them all. She slowly returned to her chair, her mind racing. But this time, when she started typing, she wasn't just mindlessly decrypting code. She was steeling herself for a choice she desperately didn't want to make. Hours ticked by. The sun began to rise outside the windows, slowly painting the city of Philadelphia in soft hues of gold and rose. Megan worked in near-total silence, her fingers flying across the keyboard, her mind carefully dissecting her father's intricate architecture piece by piece. And as she dove deeper, she started to notice something strange. The deeper she went into the code, the more she started seeing him in it. Little details, private jokes embedded within the comments that only she would ever recognize. Variables named after characters from the books he used to read to her when she was little. The variable Meg appeared no less than 3 times in critical functions. He'd known that she would find this. He'd known that she would be the one to break it. He'd been leaving her a trail of breadcrumbs all along. But to what end? Was it a gesture of reconciliation? A subtle warning? A desperate apology? She had no damn idea. At 8 in the morning, Ha-Jun silently reappeared with breakfast. This time, he didn't say a single word. He simply set down a tray filled with a delicious-smelling Korean breakfast. Rice, kimchi, jjigae, and perfectly grilled mackerel, then turned to leave. "Wait!" Megan suddenly heard herself say. He stopped in his tracks, but didn't turn around. "The code," she said slowly, carefully. "My father, he left traces. Messages, maybe? Things that only I would see." Ha-Jun's expression immediately sharpened. "What kind of messages are we talking about?" "I don't know yet exactly, but they're definitely there." She met his dark eyes squarely. "He knew I was going to be the one to find this. He prepared for it. That changes things, doesn't it?" "How so?" "It means that he's not just a coward after all." Ha-Jun's voice suddenly went cold and hard. "It means that he's playing both sides of the game, Megan. Kevin might think that he has your father's complete loyalty, but Marcus is hedging his bets just in case. You think he wants me to find him? I think he wants you to save him. And that clever girl is a weakness that we can definitely exploit to our advantage." Megan stared intently at him, at the cold calculation she saw in his eyes, and felt something inside her chest tighten, twist. Her father was still alive, but he was broken, fragmented. Ha-Jun was undeniably dangerous, but at least he was being honest with her. And she was stuck right smack in the middle of them, holding the key to everyone's survival. Ha-Jun's voice was surprisingly gentle now. "Then get some rest. You're gonna need all your strength for what's coming next." This time she didn't argue. She quietly ate her breakfast, but tasted absolutely nothing. Her mind was already racing, 3 steps ahead of everyone else. And when Ha-Jun returned again an hour later, settling down in the chair next to her to work on his own laptop, she didn't tell him to leave this time because maybe, just maybe, being seen by a monster wasn't necessarily the worst thing that could possibly happen. Maybe, in fact, it was the only thing that was keeping her even remotely sane at this point. Ha-Jun started testing her on the second day. Small, subtle things at first, barely noticeable. He would quietly enter her workstation while she was completely immersed in the code, stand just close enough so that she could feel his presence, like an invisible field of static electricity surrounding her, and then he would simply wait, watching her in complete silence. She would force herself to keep typing, to consciously ignore the way her body responded to his proximity, the way her skin would prickle with sudden awareness whenever he shifted his weight or even just breathed. He never actually touched her, though. That, she realized, would have been a whole lot easier to fight. Instead, he invaded her personal space with nothing but his mere presence, subtly testing just how long she could possibly pretend that he wasn't there. She usually managed to last about 4 minutes, tops, before her concentration completely shattered. But today, she was absolutely determined to last longer than ever before. The intricate code sprawled across her computer screens, layer upon layer of polymorphic encryption. Her father's architecture was slowly revealing itself in all of its mind-boggling fractal complexity. She was getting close to something. She could feel it, a recognizable pattern slowly starting to emerge from the chaos. Ha-Jun quietly entered the room at minute 2. She stubbornly kept typing, her jaw clenched tight, refusing to acknowledge him in any way. He deliberately moved to stand directly behind her chair, and still she kept typing. His hand casually settled on the back of her chair, close enough that she could feel the almost tangible heat of it radiating near her shoulder, but never actually making contact. Her fingers faltered slightly on the keyboard, just for a fraction of a second. "You're definitely aware of me," he observed softly, his voice low and husky. "I'm trying to work here, and clearly failing. Your error rate just spiked the moment you walked in here." She could practically hear the amusement in his voice. Line 37. "You wrote VOD instead of void." Line 41. Missing semicolon. Line 43. "I get it. Okay? Just leave me alone." She abruptly spun her chair around, forcing him to take a quick step back. "You're deliberately distracting me, aren't you? But why?" Hajuan nonchalantly crouched down, bringing himself level with her gaze. And the way he moved was all predatory grace and power. "Because I want to see how long it takes before you stop pretending." "Pretending what exactly? Oh, that you're completely unaffected by me?" Maybe less. You ran. Fury left her speechless. "You analyzed me like I was data, like I was some problem to solve. You were." His eyes locked onto hers, intense and unapologetic. "You were the most fascinating problem I'd ever encountered. A brilliant mind wasted on mere survival. An extraordinary woman made invisible by circumstances. Couldn't look away. That's not love. That's obsession. I never said it was love." Hajuan's voice dropped, becoming raw and honest. "I said it was obsession. An obsession that's kept me awake for 3 years. An obsession that drove me to restructure my entire household staff just to create a position you might apply for. An obsession that made me watch hours of surveillance footage just to see you smile at something on your laptop screen." Megan stared at him, her anger warring with something far more dangerous, because there was something in his voice, something desperate and human, that made her question everything. "You had no right. I had every right." He closed the distance, and she felt the door at her back. "Because every moment I watched you, every detail I learned, every choice I made to bring you here was about seeing you. Really seeing you. Not the invisible maid, not the struggling daughter, but the woman who deserves everything she's been denied. You can't give me what I deserve. You can only control what you take. Then let me give you truth." His hand rose to the door beside her head, caging her without touching. "I'm a monster, Megan. I've killed 17 men. I've destroyed lives for profit. I've built an empire on violence and fear. But every terrible thing I've done, every sin I've committed, led me to that coding forum 3 years ago, where I found someone who finally made me feel something besides the constant cold. That's not my responsibility. No." His other hand settled on the door, boxing her in completely. "But it's my reality. You walked into my world thinking you were invisible, but I've been seeing you since the moment I found your first line of code. And now you know what it means to be mine. I'm not yours, are you?" His face hovered inches from hers. "I own your debt. I control your access to your mother. I hold your life in my hands. But more than that, I know you, Megan. I know you bite your bottom lip when you're thinking. I know you hum when you're close to solving a problem. I know you dream about chocolate cake and fresh starts and a life where someone finally sees how extraordinary you are." Her breath caught. Every word landed like a physical touch, stripping away defenses she'd built over years of invisibility. But this time she didn't let the words paralyze her. "You know what you've observed," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "You know patterns, behaviors, surface things, but you don't know me, Hajuan. You don't know what I think about at 3 a.m. when I can't sleep. You don't know why I really dropped out of MIT. It wasn't just money. You don't know what I'm afraid of, what I dream about, what makes me feel alive." His expression flickered. "Surprise, maybe? You've been watching me like I'm a puzzle to solve." She continued. "But I'm not a puzzle. I'm a person, and you can't know someone by studying them. You can only know them by letting them choose to be known. Then let me know you." His voice went quiet. "Not through observation, through truth. Let me ask instead of assume. Let me learn you instead of catalog you. Why should I? Because I'm asking." He stepped back slightly, giving her space for the first time. "I'm not demanding. I'm not threatening. I'm asking if you'll give me a chance to see you the way you deserve to be seen, as someone with autonomy who chooses what to share." Megan studied his face, searching for manipulation. But all she saw was something raw and honest that she didn't expect. He was scared. This man who commanded empires and killed without hesitation was scared of her answer. The realization shifted something in her chest. "I hate you," she whispered. "I know. You stalked me, manipulated me, orchestrated my entire life." Yes, he didn't deny any of it. "But you also saw me when no one else did." The admission cost her, but she forced it out. "You saw my potential, my brilliance, the person I could be if I wasn't drowning." "Yes, that doesn't make what you did right." "No." His eyes held hers. "But does it make you want to walk away?" That was the question, wasn't it? She should leave. Should take her mother and disappear. Start over somewhere he couldn't find her. Return to invisible because at least invisible was safe. But safe had been killing her slowly. Hajuin had shown her a different path. A terrifying, intoxicating path where she mattered. Where her mind was valued. Where invisibility was no longer an option. And she couldn't unsee it. "Now I own you," she said finally. "I don't expect you to. And I won't be your possession, your experiment, your project. Then be my equal." He held out his hand, palm up, offering. "Work with me, not for me. Build something together instead of being built around." Megan stared at his hand, at the choice he was offering. A real choice. For maybe the first time since she'd entered his world. She could walk away or she could step forward. "If I do this," she said slowly, "I need something from you. Name it. No more secrets. No more surveillance I don't know about. No more making decisions for me because you think you know what's best." Her voice strengthened. "You want to know me? Then treat me like an equal who deserves the truth. All of it." Hajuin's smile was slight but genuine. "Agreed. And my mother's debt. It's forgiven completely. Not held over me, not used as leverage. She's free and so am I. Done." He reached into his desk and pulled out a thumb drive. Original documents, and signed and unenforceable. "Delete them yourself. Your mother is free. You're free. Stay or go. That's entirely your choice." Megan took the drive with trembling fingers, feeling the weight of actual freedom for the first time in years. "Why?" she asked. "Why give this up now?" "Because owning you was never the point." Hajuin's eyes held hers with uncomfortable intensity. "Seeing you become who you're meant to be. That's the point. And you can't become that while being owned." She clutched the drive in her palm, feeling tears threaten. This monster who'd manipulated her into his world was giving her the key to leave it. And somehow that made her want to stay. "I'm still angry," she managed. "Good. Anger is honest, and I still don't trust you. You shouldn't. Not yet. Make me earn it." Megan met his eyes across the space between them and saw something she hadn't expected. Hope. He was hoping she'd stay. Hoping she'd choose this. Choose him. Not because he forced her, but because she wanted to. 18 hours left," she said quietly. "I'll finish the code. Not because you threaten my mother. Not because you trapped me here. But because people will die if I don't. I know. And when it's done," she finally looked over her shoulder. "I'm choosing for myself. Not you, not my mother, not my father, me." Hajuin's expression softened into something that almost looked like pride. "That's all I ever wanted, clever girl. For you to finally choose yourself." She left him standing in his office, surrounded by the empire he'd built on darkness, and returned to her workstation. But this time, she carried his truth with her, and her own. The code waited. 18 hours remained, and somewhere in the tangle of her anger and fascination and unwanted desire, Megan realized that Hajuin had been right about one thing. She wasn't trapped by his threats or his power. She was trapped by wanting to see who she could become if she stopped hiding. The virus's final layer beckoned, and she dove in with renewed focus. Not for him, not even for the innocent people whose lives depended on her success, but for herself. For the woman she'd been too afraid to let the world see. And when Hajuin returned 3 hours later with coffee and silence, settling into the chair beside her to work, she didn't tell him to leave. She let him stay. Because maybe, just maybe, being seen by a monster wasn't the worst thing that could happen. Maybe it was the beginning of finally seeing herself. The code broke at hour 47. Megan's fingers stilled over the keyboard as the final encryption layer peeled away like skin from bone. The virus's architecture sprawled across her screens in complete detail. Activation sequences, target protocols, kill switches hidden in nested subroutines. She'd done it. But instead of relief, she felt hollow, because breaking the code meant facing what came next. Behind her, Hajuin rose from his chair. She felt him approach, felt the air shift with his presence. But she couldn't look away from the screens. "You found it," he said quietly. "Yes." Her voice came out distant. "The activation key is biometric. Kevin's thumbprint and retinal scan, both required simultaneously. Without both, the virus stays dormant. Can you neutralize it?" "I can do better than that." She pulled up a secondary window, her exhausted mind still racing ahead. "I can reverse engineer the delivery system. Track where the virus originated. Find Kevin. Find." She swallowed hard. "Find my father." Hajuin's hand settled on the back of her chair, warm and grounding. "That's not what I asked you to do." "I know." She finally turned to face him. "But neutralizing the virus doesn't stop Kevin. He'll just build another weapon, another threat. You'll never be free. And if we find him, then you end this permanently." She stood, her body aching from hours of sitting, but her mind crystal clear. "I can trace my father's digital signature through the code. Every keystroke has his fingerprints. I can find where he's working, where Kevin is keeping him." Something dark and approving flickered across Hajuin's face, but it was tempered with concern. "You're talking about war, Megan. About walking into Kevin's stronghold, knowing your father will be there." "I know what I'm talking about. Do you?" He moved closer, his eyes searching hers. "Because once you see him, once you face Marcus Anthony after 12 years, there's no going back. You'll have to choose. Save him or condemn him. Forgive him or—" He didn't finish the sentence. "Or what?" Her voice came out harder than she intended. "Or watch him face consequences he can't run from." The weight of that choice settled over her like a shroud. For 12 years, she'd imagined finding her father, imagined the reunion. Tears, explanations, maybe forgiveness. She'd imagined him having a good reason for leaving, something that would make the abandonment hurt less. But now, knowing he'd built weapons for Kevin, knowing he'd chosen comfort over conscience, knowing he'd left breadcrumbs in the code for her to find but never reached out himself, the fantasy shattered. "I need to see him," she said finally. "Not for closure, not for forgiveness, but because—" She struggled to find the words. "Because I need to understand if the man who taught me to code still exists, or if that person died 12 years ago and I've been mourning a ghost." Hajuin's expression softened with something that looked like understanding. "Then we go together. But Megan, I need you to be prepared for what we might find. Your father isn't the man you remember. Kevin has broken him in ways that don't show on the surface." "How do you know?" "Because breaking people is what Kevin does best." His voice went cold. "He doesn't use force. He uses comfort, absolution. He gives people permission to forget their sins by making them commit new ones. It's insidious and effective." Megan absorbed this, trying to imagine her father. Strong, principled Marcus Anthony, broken by comfort. It seemed impossible, but then, 12 years ago, it had seemed impossible that he would leave. "Show me how to trace him," she said, returning to the keyboard. "Teach me what I need to know about Kevin's operation. If we're doing this, I'm going in prepared." Hajuin's smile was slight but genuine. "Now you're thinking like a queen." They spent the next 2 hours planning. Megan mapped the digital trail her father had left. IP addresses routing through proxies, server farms in Virginia and Delaware, finally terminating at a location in South Philadelphia, an abandoned industrial complex near the refineries. Hajuin pulled up satellite imagery, structural blueprints he'd somehow acquired, security assessments from his intelligence team. "Kevin operates from here." He pointed to the main warehouse. 3 floors. The top floor is his command center, where he meets with lieutenants, conducts business. The second floor is residential apartments for his inner circle. And the bottom floor, that's where he keeps his builders, the people who create his weapons, his infrastructure, his digital empire. Hajuin's finger moved to a specific section. Your father will be there, in a lab Kevin built specifically for him. Megan stared at the blueprint, at the space where her father spent his days building death. What kind of security? 12 men, maybe more. Biometric locks on all entry points. Surveillance covering every approach. He pulled up another layer. But there's a service entrance on the east side. Old loading dock. The cameras have a blind spot if you approach from the rail line. You've been planning this. I've been planning for every contingency since Kevin sent his first threat. Hajuin met her eyes, including the one where you asked to come with me. You knew I would. I hoped you would. His hand found hers, squeezing gently. Because facing this alone, facing your father and my brother, it's more weight than one person should carry. Even someone as strong as you. Megan looked down at their joined hands, at the way his fingers intertwined with hers like they'd always fit together. 2 weeks ago, his touch would have terrified her. Now it felt like an anchor. When do we leave? 2 hours. I need to brief my team, gather weapons, prepare extraction routes. He pulled her closer, his free hand cupping her face. But Megan, once we're inside that warehouse, follow my lead. Kevin is unpredictable, dangerous. If he realizes how much you mean to me, he'll use it. How much do I mean to you? Hajuin's eyes held hers with uncomfortable intensity. Everything. You mean everything. And that's the weakness Kevin will exploit if he sees it. The admission made her chest tight. This man who'd built empires on ruthlessness, who'd admitted to 17 kills, who'd manipulated her entire life. He was telling her she'd become his vulnerability. Then don't let him see it, she said quietly. I'm not sure I can hide it anymore. His thumb brushed across her cheek. Every time I look at you, I see the person I've been obsessed with for 3 years finally looking back. Finally seeing me, is written all over my face. Then we make that work for us. Megan's strategic mind kicked in. The same one that had been solving impossible problems for 47 hours straight. Kevin expects you to bring force. He expects violence. He doesn't expect you to bring me, his secret weapon, the daughter of his asset. We used that surprise. Hajuin's expression shifted to something appreciative. What are you thinking? I walk in as your hostage, your leverage against Marcus. Kevin will believe you're using me to force my father's cooperation. It's exactly the kind of move he'd make. He'll underestimate me because I'm just Marcus Anthony's daughter, while you're actually your partner. She smiled, sharp and dangerous. I'll have access to my father, to the systems, to everything Kevin thinks is secure, because he doesn't see me as a threat. And when the moment comes, I'll do what needs to be done, which is... Megan thought about the code she'd broken, the system she now understood, the digital architecture her father had built. I'll give Kevin exactly what he wants, and then I'll take it all away. Hajuin pulled her into a kiss that was claiming and careful at once, tasting like coffee and promises. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to hers. You terrify me, he whispered, in the best possible way. Good. She smiled against his lips. Now let's go get your brother. The call came at 2:47 a.m. Earlier than planned. Megan had been trying to sleep, her body exhausted but her mind racing, when her secure line buzzed. Hajuin's voice came through, rough and strained. Change of plans. Kevin moved the timeline. We go now. What happened? He launched a test. 3 ventilators at a hospital in Camden went dark for 90 seconds. Gunfire cracked in the background. My men are already engaging his perimeter guards. We have maybe 20 minutes before he realizes this is a full assault. I'm ready. She was already moving, pulling on the black tactical clothes Hajuin provided earlier. Practical, flexible, nothing that would slow her down. Jay's coming for you. 2 minutes. The line went dead. Megan's hands shook as she laced her boots, but her mind stayed clear. This was it. No more planning, no more preparation, just action and consequences. Jay arrived exactly 2 minutes later, his face grim. Stay close. Move fast. Don't hesitate. The drive to South Philadelphia took 14 minutes through empty streets. Jay drove like demons chased them, weaving through industrial zones until the warehouse complex loomed ahead. a skeletal structure of rust and concrete lit by sodium lights that cast everything in a sickly orange hue. Bodies littered the approach, Kevin's men neutralized with surgical efficiency. Inside, the warehouse reeked of gun oil and blood. Hajuin's remaining men had secured the perimeter, but the center space held something that made Megan's breath catch. A server farm. Dozens of towers humming with processing power. Screens flickering with code she recognized instantly. Her father's architecture rendered in steel and light. And there, in the middle of it all, Hajuin stood over Kevin Park. Kevin was younger than she'd expected. Handsome in a cold way that reminded her of marble statues. Beautiful and lifeless. Blood soaked his shoulder, his face pale with shock and rage. But it was the man beside Kevin that made Megan freeze. Marcus Anthony, her father. Older now, his hair gray, his face lined with years of running, but unmistakably the man who'd taught her to code, who'd called her Maggie, who'd disappeared without explanation. Their eyes met across the warehouse floor. Megan. His voice cracked. Baby girl, what are you doing here? She couldn't speak, couldn't move. 12 years of imagined reunions. And now that the moment was here, she felt nothing but static in her mind. Hajuin turned, his expression fierce and relieved. She's here because I need her. Because Kevin's last gift is about to kill thousands if we can't stop it. The virus is tied to my vitals. Kevin spat, his voice carrying dark satisfaction despite his wound. Heart rate drops below 40. Respiratory failure. Loss of consciousness. Any of it triggers immediate launch. So go ahead, brother. Kill me. But you'll be killing thousands of innocent people, too. Not if Megan stops it first. Hajuin's eyes found hers. Can you do it? She moved forward on autopilot, her body operating on training and adrenaline while her emotions stayed carefully locked away. She couldn't process her father's presence. Not yet. Not while people's lives hung in the balance. The nearest screen showed the code scrolling past. She studied it, her fingers already mapping the solution. It's possible, she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. But I need time. The biometric monitoring is redundant. 6 different sensors, all feeding into the activation protocol. I have to disable each one without triggering failsafes. How long? 20 minutes, maybe 30. Kevin's heart rate is already dropping, Jay reported, checking a medical scanner. Blood loss. He's got maybe 45 minutes before his vitals crash. Marcus pushed forward. Megan, listen to me. Walk away. This isn't your fight. These men, this world, it's not you. She didn't look at him. Couldn't. You don't know who I am anymore. You're my daughter. I'm the daughter you abandoned. Her voice came out cold. Factual. The one you left drowning in debt while you built weapons for psychopaths. Don't pretend you know me, Marcus. You gave up that right 12 years ago. I was protecting you. The NSA wanted me dead. I had to disappear. You had to choose. Now she did look at him. And the weight of 12 years of unanswered questions pressed into every word. And you chose to run instead of fight. You chose to hide instead of stay. Every day for 12 years you chose not to come back. Marcus' face crumpled. Megan, please. She's busy. Hajuin's voice cut through, protective and cold. And you lost your vote the day you wrote code designed to frame me for mass murder. Kevin said. Kevin lied. Hajuin's gun rose, aimed at Kevin's head. He promised you safety, gave you resources, made you complicit in atrocity. You stopped being her father the moment you chose comfort over conscience. But Megan was only half listening. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, building the decryption algorithm layer by layer. First sensor disabled. Second sensor required polymorphic decryption. Beside her, Marcus watched with something like awe. You got better. So much better than I ever was. I had to. She didn't slow her typing. Someone needed to clean up your mess. Medi. Don't call me that. The childhood nickname made her fingers stutter. That name belonged to a girl who thought her father was a hero. That girl died when you left. Silence fell except for the clicking of keys and the hum of servers. 15 minutes passed. 20. Kevin's vitals were dropping. Heart rate at 52 and falling. Then everything went to hell. 3 of Kevin's men hidden in the warehouse rafters opened fire. Chaos erupted. Hajuin's men returning fire. Jay shoving Megan behind a server tower. Bullets ricocheting off concrete and steel. Through the madness, Megan kept typing. 4th sensor disabled. 5th required biometric override. She saw Hajuin move like violence made art, taking down 2 men with precision that should have terrified her. Instead, she felt something fierce and proud. This man who fought for his empire while she fought with her mind. Then Marcus lunged toward Kevin. Whether to protect or restrain him, Megan couldn't tell. Kevin pulled a hidden pistol. Time slowed. Megan saw the gun rise. Saw it aim at Hajuin's unprotected back. Saw Kevin's finger tighten on the trigger. Jay's backup weapon lay on the floor beside her. Dropped during the initial chaos. Her hand moved before conscious thought. She grabbed the gun, raised it with shaking hands and fired. The bullet took Kevin's guard in the shoulder. Not Kevin himself, but the man who'd been moving to execute Hajuin from behind. The guard dropped. Hajuin spun. Saw her with the gun. Saw what she'd done. Their eyes locked across the warehouse. Hers wide with shock. His burning with something between fury and worship. Marcus stared at his daughter, horrified. Megan, what have you become? She lowered. 1 hour 14 minutes and 44 seconds the gun wavered in her hand. Her hands trembling. Someone who doesn't let the people I care about die. She returned to the keyboard, forcing her shaking fingers to steady. The final sensor broke under her relentless assault. The virus destabilized, its activation protocols crumbling into harmless fragments. It's done, she called out, her voice echoing slightly in the cavernous space. The virus is neutralized. Kevin's vitals don't matter anymore. But the words felt wrong as soon as they left her lips. Empty, because she'd just crossed a line, a point of no return. She'd shot someone. She'd, 1 hour 15 minutes and 17 seconds chosen violence as her solution. She'd become exactly what her father had feared she would. Hajuin's expression shifted, morphing into something victorious and grim. He turned back to Kevin, who'd slumped against a support beam, his face pale, streaked with blood loss and defeat. You lose, brother, Hajuin stated, a clear edge to his voice. Kevin's laugh was wet, painful, a rattling sound in his chest. Do I? He rasped. Look at what you've done. You've turned an innocent woman into a killer, corrupted her, made her just like us. I call that a victory, wouldn't you? No. Hajuin's voice rang with certainty. I gave her the 1 hour 15 minutes and 49 seconds choice to be extraordinary. She made herself what she is by shooting someone, by choosing violence. That's on her. Kevin's eyes, clouded with pain and resignation, found Megan's. That's not extraordinary, he croaked. That's just broken. Megan wanted to argue, wanted to defend her choice, to justify the action she had taken. But the gun in her hand felt heavy with a truth she couldn't deny, a weight that pressed down on her. She'd become someone her father didn't recognize, someone she wasn't even sure she recognized herself. Hajuin raised his weapon, aimed at Kevin's head. Wait, Marcus' voice. 1 hour 16 minutes and 19 seconds cut through the tension-filled air. Please just wait. He moved with surprising speed between Hajuin and Kevin, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender. And for the first time since Megan had entered the warehouse, she really looked at her father, truly saw him. He looked small, diminished, nothing like the giant of her childhood memories, the figure she had always looked up to. Megan, Marcus said, his voice shaking slightly, before this ends, before you watch him kill Kevin, I need you to understand something. There's nothing you can say that changes what you did, she said, a tremor in her own voice. I know. He took a step toward her, and she noticed Hajuin's subtle shift. 1 hour 16 minutes and 54 seconds positioning himself between them, protecting her even now, a silent guardian. But you should know why I left. Why I really left. You already said the NSA, she countered, confusion evident in her tone. That was part of it, Marcus conceded. His eyes filled with tears, glistening in the dim light. But the real reason, the project I was working on, the encryption I designed, it was used to target a terrorist cell in Yemen. Smart weapons, precision strikes, clean and efficient. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing nervously. Except the intelligence was wrong. The building we hit wasn't terrorists. It was a school. 47 children. 1 hour 17 minutes and 30 seconds died because of code I wrote. Because I was so proud of my brilliance that I never questioned what it would be used for. Megan's breath caught in her throat, a sharp intake of air. I couldn't live with it, Marcus continued, his voice thick with emotion. Couldn't face you, your mother, myself. So I ran. And when Kevin found me, when he offered me a chance to forget, to become someone new, I took it because being Marcus Anthony meant remembering those children. Being Kevin's weapon meant I could pretend I was someone else. That doesn't make it better, Megan said, her voice barely a whisper. No. His voice. 1 hour and 18 minutes broke, cracking under the weight of his confession. But it makes it true. I didn't leave because I didn't love you, Maggie. I left because I couldn't love myself, and I was too much of a coward to face what I'd done. Megan stared at this man who'd shaped her childhood and abandoned her adolescence, and felt something crack inside her chest. A dam breaking within her, because she understood. God help her. She understood. She just shot someone to protect Hadjin. She'd crossed the same line her father had crossed, made the same choice to use her skills for violence. And part of her, 1 hour 18 minutes and 31 seconds wanted to run too, to disappear and escape the consequences of her actions. You could have come back, she whispered, the words laced with pain and a hint of accusation. After, when you'd processed it, you could have come home. I know. Marcus' tears fell freely now, streaming down his face. But every year that passed made it harder. How do you explain 12 years of silence? How do you ask forgiveness for abandoning your child when she needed you most? So I stayed gone, and I hated myself more every day. Good. The word came out harsher than she intended. A sharp snap. You should hate yourself because while you were hiding, Mom almost died. While you, 1 hour 19 minutes and 6 seconds were building weapons for Kevin, I was scrubbing toilets to afford her ventilator. While you were forgetting, I was drowning. I know, and I'm so sorry, he pleaded, his voice filled with remorse. Sorry doesn't fix it. Megan stood, putting the gun down carefully on the server bank. Sorry doesn't give me back 12 years. Sorry doesn't make you a father again. She walked toward him slowly, and Hadjin moved with her, a silent shadow at her back, always watchful. When she stood directly in front of Marcus, she reached into her pocket and pulled out 1 hour 19 minutes and 37 seconds something she'd been carrying since she'd found his signature in the code. A photograph, creased and faded with age. Her at 7 years old, sitting on Marcus' lap while he taught her her first program. Both of them smiling at the camera, faces bright with joy and possibility. A snapshot of happier times. She'd kept it all these years, hidden in her wallet, a talisman against forgetting. Now she held it out to him, offering him a piece of their past. This is the man I mourned, she said quietly, her voice thick with emotion. The father I lost. But he's not you, is he? That man died in Yemen with those 47 children. 1 hour 20 minutes and 10 seconds, you're just his ghost. Marcus took the photo with shaking hands, staring at it like it caused him physical pain, the image a painful reminder of what he had lost and what he had done. So, here's what's going to happen, Megan continued, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. Hadjin is going to give you a new identity. Money. A chance to start over somewhere none of us will ever find you. And you're going to take it. You're going to disappear again. But this time you don't come back. Not for me. Not for Mom, not for anyone. Megan, he started, his voice pleading. I'm done being your 1 hour 20 minutes and 43 seconds daughter. She interrupted, her voice gaining strength. I'm done waiting for you to choose me. You had 12 years. You never did. So now I'm choosing me and I choose him. She turned and stepped back toward Hadjin, whose hand immediately found the small of her back, grounding her, a silent reassurance. Marcus looked between them, at the Mafia boss and the daughter he'd lost, and saw no path back, no hope of reconciliation. "Your mother would be ashamed," he whispered, his voice filled with despair. "My mother is alive because of him," Megan retorted, her voice unwavering. "That's all that matters." Jay appeared, 1 hour 21 minutes and 16 seconds at Marcus's side, gripping his arm firmly. "Let's go," he said, his tone brooking no argument. "The boss's mercy has an expiration date." Marcus let himself be led away, looking back once with devastated eyes, his gaze lingering on Megan. Megan didn't watch him go. She was too busy staring at the photo she'd kept for 12 years, now clutched in her father's hands as he walked out of her life forever. Letting go hurt more than she'd expected, a sharp pang of loss. But it also felt like freedom, a weight lifted from her shoulders. Hadjin pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her protectively as the weight of what she'd done, shot someone, 1 hour 21 minutes and 45 seconds banished her father, chosen this life, crashed over her in a tidal wave of emotion. "Are you hurt?" he asked quietly, his voice filled with concern. "No." Her voice came out hollow, devoid of feeling. "I shot someone. I sent my father away forever. I crossed every line I swore I wouldn't cross." "Yes," Hadjin acknowledged, holding her tighter. "And I don't regret it." The admission felt like exposing a raw wound, vulnerable and tender. "I should regret it. I should hate myself. But all I feel is relief that it's over." "That's not wrong." Hadjin's voice was gentle, reassuring. "That's survival. That's choosing. 1 hour 22 minutes and 19 seconds to live instead of drown." "My father called me broken," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Your father is wrong." He pulled back slightly, forcing her to meet his eyes, his gaze intense and unwavering. "You're not broken, Megan. You're evolved. You saw the choice. Let the man you care about die or pick up a weapon. And you chose life. That's not corruption. That's clarity." Kevin spoke from his position slumped against the wall. "She's just as twisted as we are now." Hadjin glanced back at his half-brother, still slumped against the support beam, his face pale and drawn. "Don't." 1 hour 22 minutes and 53 seconds let his words poison what you've become. Megan wanted to believe him, desperately wanted to think that shooting someone to save a life made her something other than a killer, that her actions were justified. But the weight of the gun she'd held, the feel of it in her hand, wouldn't leave her. Hadjin seemed to sense her spiral, her descent into doubt. He cupped her face, forcing her attention back to him, demanding she focus on him. "Look at me. Tell me what you see." "A monster who kills without hesitation," she said, the words barely audible. "Yes," Hadjin said, his eyes holding hers relentlessly. "And what else?" "Someone who saw me when no one else did. Someone who challenged me. 1 hour 23 minutes and 26 seconds. Someone who gave me purpose." "And do you think I became this without cost? Without choices that haunt me? Without wondering if I'm irredeemable?" His thumb brushed her cheek, a tender gesture in stark contrast to the violence that surrounded them. "I've made terrible choices, Megan. I live with blood on my hands every day. But I also live. I build. I protect the people who matter to me. That's what you did tonight. You protected what matters." "At what cost?" she asked, her voice filled with anguish. "The cost of innocence." He said it gently but truthfully, not shying away from the harsh reality. "But innocence isn't the same as goodness." 1 hour 23 minutes and 58 seconds. You can be good without being innocent. You can choose mercy without being naive. You can acknowledge what you've done and still deserve better than drowning in shame. His words settled over her like absolution, a forgiveness she wasn't sure she'd earned, a balm to her wounded soul. "What do we do with Kevin?" she asked quietly, breaking the silence. Hadjin looked back at his half-brother, who watched their exchange with pale fury, his eyes filled with resentment. "That's not my choice to make alone. Not anymore." "What do you mean?" Megan asked, confused by his statement. "You saved my life. You broke his weapon. You made this victory. 1 hour, 24 minutes, and 30 seconds possible. Hajan's voice went formal, serious, the tone of a leader addressing an equal. So, the choice is yours, Megan. Do we kill him? Turn him over to the authorities? Let him live in exile? This empire belongs to both of us now. Both of us decide its justice. The weight of that choice pressed down on her shoulders, the responsibility immense. Kevin had built the weapon that forced her into this world, had set these events in motion. Kevin had hired her father, creating the trap that destroyed any chance of reunion, a final, devastating blow. Kevin had threatened thousands of innocent lives. By every measure, he, 1 hour, 25 minutes, and 2 seconds deserved to die. Retribution seemed just. But looking at him, broken, bleeding, defeated, a shadow of his former self, Megan felt something unexpected, a surprising flicker of emotion. Pity. He's your brother, she said quietly, her voice barely audible. Half-brother, Hajan corrected, his tone devoid of warmth. And he tried to destroy everything I've built. I know. She looked at Kevin, at the cold beauty that masked the emptiness inside, the hollowness that had driven his ambition. But killing him doesn't change what he did. It doesn't bring back the innocence I lost. It just adds more weight to carry. So, what do you suggest? Hajan asked, his gaze unwavering, waiting for her decision. Megan thought about her father's exile, a banishment instead of a death sentence. About the choice to live. 1 hour, 25 minutes, and 35 seconds with consequences rather than escape them through death. A punishment in itself. Let him live, she said finally, her voice filled with resolve. But not in comfort, not in hiding. He lives knowing he failed, knowing you won, knowing that everything he tried to take from you is now under our protection. Hajan's expression shifted to something thoughtful, considering her words carefully. You want him to watch his legacy crumble, he stated, understanding dawning in his eyes. I want him to understand that destruction doesn't equal power. That all his spectacle and violence accomplished nothing except his own defeat. She met 1 hour, 26 minutes, and 5 seconds Kevin's eyes across the warehouse, her gaze unwavering. Death would be mercy. Life is justice. Kevin's laugh was bitter, pained, a sound filled with defeat. You think exile is worse than death? He sneered. You think watching from a distance is punishment? I think you'll spend every day knowing you were beaten by a maid and a monster. Megan's voice carried a steel she didn't know she possessed. A strength born from the choices she'd made. I think you'll remember that moment when I held a gun and chose to save instead of destroy. And I think that will eat at 1 hour, 26 minutes, and 32 seconds you far more than a bullet ever could. Something flickered in Kevin's eyes. A brief moment of recognition maybe, or grudging respect. A glimpse of understanding. Hajan turned to Jay, issuing his orders. Arrange transport. South America. Enough money to survive but not thrive. And make sure he understands. If he ever returns, if he ever threatens what's mine, there will be no mercy the second time. Understood, boss, Jay acknowledged. Jay and V9 took custody of Kevin and began to lead him away. They left Kevin and Jay's custody and walked out of the warehouse together, stepping into the dawn. Dawn was breaking over Philadelphia, painting the 1 hour 27 minutes and 6 seconds industrial wasteland in shades of gold and rose, a beautiful contrast to the violence they had just witnessed. Bodies had been cleared, the evidence of the night being erased with ruthless efficiency. Evidence was already being sanitized. Within hours, it would be like the battle had never happened, the scene scrubbed clean. But Megan would carry it forever. The events of the night etched into her memory. The weight of the gun, the look in her father's eyes, the choice to exile rather than execute. Hajan's hand found hers as they approached the waiting car, a silent offer of comfort. Are you okay? He asked, his voice soft with concern. No. The honest answer came easier than pretense, the truth bubbling to the surface. But I will be. That's all anyone can ask, Hajan replied, squeezing her hand gently. They drove back to the 1 hour 27 minutes and 37 seconds penthouse in silence. Both exhausted, both processing what they'd survived, each lost in their own thoughts. When they arrived, dawn had fully broken, bathing the city in light. Light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, making everything look clean and new despite the bloodstains on their clothes. A stark contrast to the darkness they had just emerged from. Hajin pulled her close in the middle of the empty living room, holding her like she might disappear, his grip tight and reassuring. "Thank you," he whispered against her hair, his voice filled with emotion. "For what? For choosing to stay? For seeing this through? For becoming my equal when you could have stayed safe?" 1 hour 28 minutes and 7 seconds his arms tightened around her, enveloping her in his embrace. "For saving my life. You would have done the same," she replied, her voice soft. "Yes, but that doesn't make your choice less extraordinary." They stood like that for a long moment, two people who'd walked into darkness and emerged, changed but intact, scarred but alive. Finally, Megan pulled back enough to see his face, her gaze searching his eyes. "I need a shower and sleep, and time to process what I've become," she said, her voice filled with weariness. "Take all the time you need," Hajin replied, his voice gentle and understanding. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch tender. "I'll be here when you're ready." She believed him, for the first time since entering. 1 hour 28 minutes and 39 seconds his world. She believed he'd keep his promises, that his words were genuine. She walked to her suite, still luxurious, still beautiful, but no longer feeling like a cage, the space now a refuge. She stood under water so hot it bordered on pain, letting it wash over her, cleansing her both physically and emotionally. Watching her father walk away, watching Kevin's exile, watching herself transform from an invisible maid to something fierce and necessary, the images replaying in her mind. And through it all, Hajin had stood beside her, not controlling her choices, not making decisions for her, just present, supportive, equal. When she emerged in 1 hour 29 minutes and 14 seconds hour later, clean and exhausted, she felt a sense of catharsis, a weight lifted from her shoulders. She found him in his office, staring out at the city with whiskey in hand, his posture pensive. "Can't sleep?" she asked from the doorway, her voice soft. "Too much adrenaline." He glanced back, his eyes meeting hers. "You same. Come here." She crossed to him, and he pulled her into his lap with gentle possession, claiming her with a simple gesture. They sat like that, watching Philadelphia wake up, both lost in their own thoughts, each grappling with the events of the night. "I'm not the same person who walked into your study 2 days ago," Megan said quietly, breaking the silence. "I know, and I'm not. 1 hour 29 minutes and 46 seconds sure who I am now," Hajin replied, his voice thoughtful. "You're someone who survived." His voice was quiet but certain, filled with conviction. "Someone who made impossible choices and lived with the consequences. Someone who's finally free to become whoever you want to be." "Is that freedom or just a different kind of cage?" she asked, her voice filled with doubt. "That's up to you to decide," Hajin said, his gaze unwavering. He pressed a kiss to her temple, a tender gesture. "But Megan, whatever you decide, wherever you go from here, you're not invisible anymore. You can't be. You've been seen, really seen. And 1 hour 30 minutes and 19 seconds that changes everything." She leaned back against him, feeling the truth of his words settle into her bones, resonating deep within her. He was right. She couldn't go back to invisible, couldn't return to safe and small and unseen. That part of her life was over. She tasted power, purpose, being essential instead of expendable, feeling valued for her abilities. And God help her. She wanted more. She craved it. "I'm staying," she heard herself say, the words spoken with conviction. Hajin went very still, his body tensing slightly. "You're sure?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "No. Honest to the end." She admitted the truth. "But I'm choosing it anyway because going back feels like dying slowly, and staying feels like 1 hour 30 minutes and 55 seconds living dangerously, and I'd rather live. His arms tightened around her, enveloping her in a protective embrace, and she felt his breath hitch with something that might have been relief or joy or fear, a mix of emotions she couldn't quite decipher. Then welcome home, clever girl, he whispered, his voice filled with affection. Welcome home. They sat there as Philadelphia woke around them, the city stirring to life. Two broken people who'd found something like wholeness in each other's damage, finding solace in their shared experiences. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was true and honest connection. And for now, that was enough, a foundation to build upon. She didn't know what tomorrow looked like, only that she'd stopped being afraid of her. 1 hour 31 minutes and 25 seconds own darkness, embracing it instead of running from it. Whatever came next, war, love, both, she would meet it on her terms, forging her own path. 6 months later, Seoul shimmered beneath their windows like circuitry alive with power, a testament to the empire they controlled. Megan stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Han River, wrapped in black silk that cost more than her old car, a symbol of her new life. Behind her, Hajin's arms circled her waist, his lips tracing the curve of her neck, a possessive gesture. She'd stopped flinching at his touch months ago, growing accustomed to his presence. Now she leaned into it, into him, into the life they'd built on. 1 hour 31 minutes and 58 seconds darkness and mutual obsession, a connection forged in the fires of violence. The Yakuza accepted our terms, he murmured against her skin, his Korean accent turning each word into silk, a seductive whisper. The East Coast is ours. What about the Russians? She asked, her voice barely audible. They'll fall in line or fall apart, Hajin replied, his tone dismissive. His hand slid possessively over her hip, a silent claim. The strategy you designed, cutting their supply chains while offering legitimate alternatives, is brilliant. They can't fight what they can't see. I learned from the best, Megan said, turning in his arms. The diamond on her finger caught the 1 hour 32 minutes and 29 seconds city lights, a dazzling display. Black diamond, rare and flawless, like the one his mother had worn, a family heirloom. They'd married a month ago in a private ceremony, a secret celebration. No guests, no witnesses except Jay. Just vows spoken in blood and shadows and promises that felt more binding than any legal document. A bond forged in darkness. Mrs. Kim Megan, or Megan Anthony Kim when she wanted to maintain her own identity in business dealings, the two names intertwined. Both names carried weight now, a symbol of her dual existence. She ran criminal operations from behind screens, a ghost in the machine. She'd erased rivals, stolen data, laundered millions through shell. 1 hour 33 minutes and 2 seconds companies that existed only in digital space, a master of deception. She'd become the ghost in the machine, the invisible hand moving Hajin's empire into the future. And she'd never felt more alive, a sense of purpose driving her. Her mother lived in luxury in Zurich now, believing her daughter worked in international consulting, a believable lie. They video called weekly, and Megan spun stories about clients and travel and a life that was normal enough to be believable, maintaining the facade. Her father had sent one email from Buenos Aires 3 months ago, a digital message in a bottle. I see. 1 hour 33 minutes and 32 seconds you in the news under different names. But I know it's you. I don't know if I should be proud or terrified. She deleted it without responding, severing the connection. She'd learned to bury guilt beneath precision, compartmentalizing her emotions. The only way to stay functional in Hajin's world was to code her emotions the way she coded firewalls. Contained, encrypted, unseen, protecting herself from the pain. Some bridges weren't meant to be rebuilt, the damage too extensive. The silence after war was the strangest kind of peace, a fragile truce. Seoul's skyline shimmered through the glass, a constant presence. Each light a reminder. 1 hour 34 minutes and 1 second that survival came with its own ghosts, the price of their success. Hajin's phone buzzed against the glass table, a notification disrupting the moment. The shipment cleared customs. No complications. he stated, his voice devoid of emotion. Good. Megan pulled him toward the bedroom, a silent invitation. This space they'd made theirs, a sanctuary of sorts. All dark silk and city views and evidence of lives lived in dangerous luxury, a testament to their lifestyle. We celebrate later, she said, her voice husky. Right now, I want you to remind me who I belong to. His eyes darkened with familiar hunger, a desire that burned within him. Say it first, he commanded, his voice low and demanding. I'm yours, she whispered, her voice filled with submission. She kissed him, teeth and tongue and promise, a passionate embrace. Every dark, twisted, 1 hour 34 minutes and 36 seconds brilliant part of me forever. No, Hadjin lifted her, carrying her to their bed, his movements deliberate, the one where he'd worshipped and challenged her 1,000 times, the place where their connection had deepened. Not just mine, precious girl, he whispered against her skin. We belong to each other now, the way fire belongs to what it burns, equal only in the scars it leaves. He laid her down, stripped away the silk with reverent hands, and claimed her with the same intensity as that first night, but different now, deeper, built on months of learning each other's bodies, each other's triggers. 1 hour 35 minutes and 7 seconds each other's darkest wants. A bond forged in passion. They moved together like code and encryption, complex, layered, solving for variables that changed with every iteration, a perfect synergy. And when they finally collapsed into tangled limbs and satisfied exhaustion, Hadjin traced patterns on her dark skin that glowed in the soul night, a tender gesture of affection. Regrets? He asked quietly, breaking the silence. Megan thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago, the life she had left behind. The broke student cleaning floors, drowning in debt, dreaming of normal, a distant memory. That woman was dead, a casualty of the war. In her place lived a queen of 1 hour 35 minutes and 39 seconds shadows, partner to a king of violence, a new identity forged in darkness. And she wouldn't change a single thing, embracing her new persona. She thought about her father's horror, society's judgment, the line she'd crossed when she pulled that trigger, the consequences of her actions. Then she looked at the man who'd seen her brilliance when the world saw a maid, recognizing her potential, who'd challenged her instead of coddling her, who'd given her power instead of just safety, offering her a path to greatness. Only that I didn't find you sooner, she said, her voice filled with sincerity. He kissed her forehead, tender in a way reserved only for her, a private moment. We have forever now, Hadjin whispered. Forever in 1 hour 36 minutes and 8 seconds hell, Megan added, a dark smile playing on her lips. The best kind of forever, Hadjin agreed, echoing her sentiment. They fell asleep as soul glittered below. Two people who'd chosen darkness over light, obsession over sanity, and each other over everything else, their fates intertwined. The next morning, Megan woke to find Hadjin already in his office, conducting business in rapid Korean, his focus unwavering. She showered, dressed in tailored black pants and a crimson blouse, and settled at her own command center, ready to face the day. 3 curved screens displaying markets, communications, the digital pulse of their empire, her domain. A message waited. 1 hour 36 minutes and 39 seconds in her secure inbox. A digital threat. Anonymous, encrypted, the sender unknown. She broke the encryption in 90 seconds, child's play now, and read the contents, her eyes scanning the information. New player entering the East Coast market. Former NSA. Dangerous. Claims to have information about Hadjin Kim's wife. Attached surveillance photos, evidence of her double life. Her entering a server farm in Virginia last month during a business acquisition, a secret mission. Her meeting with their financial advisors in Manhattan, coordinating their operations. Her at a charity gala on Hadjin's arm, looking every inch the legitimate businesswoman, maintaining their facade. But beneath, 1 hour 37 minutes and 17 seconds those older photos, her in a maid's uniform, a stark reminder of her past. Her father's NSA personnel file, exposing his connection to the agency. Kevin Park's autopsy report. A disturbing revelation. Wait, autopsy. Her blood ran cold, a wave of shock washing over her. For a long moment, she just stared at the screen, pulse roaring in her ears, her heart pounding in her chest. The room felt smaller, claustrophobic, like the walls had been listening the whole time, betraying her secrets. Kevin was supposed to be alive in exile, a promise broken. That had been the deal, their agreement. She pulled up secure channels, traced back 3 months, and found it, the evidence she sought. Kevin Park, deceased. Apparent suicide in Buenos Aires. Single gunshot. 1 hour 37 minutes and 54 seconds wound to the head, the report stated. But the ballistics report told a different story, a more sinister truth. Professional hit made to look like suicide, the evidence suggested. Hadjin had killed him anyway, betraying her trust. You're tense. What's wrong? She spun to find him in her doorway, coffee in hand, wearing that expression of casual concern that used to fool her, a mask of innocence. Kevin's dead, she stated, her voice cold and accusing. He didn't even blink, his composure unwavering. Yes, he acknowledged, his gaze steady. You told me he was alive in exile. He was, for 3 months. Hadjin sat down the coffee and moved closer, his presence intimidating. Then he contacted a journalist, started talking. 1 hour 38 minutes and 27 seconds about his brother's criminal empire and the innocent woman he'd corrupted, he explained. He was going to expose everything. Expose you. So you killed him, she said, the words accusatory. I protected what's mine, Hadjin replied, his voice devoid of remorse. No apology, no softening, just a cold, calculated explanation. He violated the terms of his exile. He threatened you. I eliminated the threat. Megan stared at him, at this man who'd promised no more secrets, and felt something crack in her chest, a sense of betrayal. The memory of his old promise, no more lies, flashed through her mind, a bitter reminder. You lied to me, she accused, her voice filled with anger. I protected you from a 1 hour 39 minutes and 2 seconds decision you didn't need to make, he countered, his voice staying calm, rational, attempting to justify his actions. You chose mercy. I respected that choice for as long as it was viable. When it became a liability, I made the hard call. That wasn't your call to make, Megan retorted, her voice rising in anger. It was exactly my call to make, Hadjin replied, his tone unwavering. He moved closer, and she backed up against her desk, feeling trapped. You're brilliant with strategy, with code, with seeing 3 moves ahead. But Megan, you're not a killer. Not really. You shot that guard to save my life, a spur-of-the-moment decision. But executing Kevin in cold blood, that's 1 hour 39 minutes and 38 seconds, not who you are. So I did it for you. You don't get to decide who I am, she shouted, her voice filled with defiance. She wanted to hit him, to make him feel the weight of what he'd stolen pressed down on her. Her choice, her agency, gone. But rage, hot and sharp, cracked under the crushing weight of everything they'd already been through together. I'm not deciding who you are, Megan. I'm protecting what you are. His hands settled on either side of her head, a cage built of air, not quite touching. You're good, Megan. Despite everything, despite this messed up world, you still have a conscience that keeps you human. I won't let you lose that. Not for anything. That's not protection. That's control. He watched her for what felt like forever, his jaw clenched tight, like he was trying to decide whether to blow up something sacred. It's love. The word hung between them, a live grenade ready to explode. What? Her voice was barely a whisper, lost in the space between them. His expression softened, suddenly vulnerable, raw. It's love, Megan. Messy and screwed up, and probably not what either of us expected. But I love you. I love you enough to carry the weight of Kevin's death so you don't have to. Love you enough to make the hard choices that let you keep believing in mercy. Love you enough to lie when the truth would break something precious. That's not love. That's obsession, manipulation, control. He smiled, but it was a smile without any real humor, a mirthless expression. Yes, it's all of those things too, because I never learned how to love cleanly. But Megan, I learned how to love you, and that means protecting you from becoming like me. She wanted to scream, wanted to unleash all the rage that was building inside her, all the lies and broken promises and the fact that he'd killed Kevin behind her back. But a small part of her, a part that still woke up screaming sometimes in the dead of night, seeing that guard's face as she pulled the trigger, felt a strange sense of relief. She hadn't had to kill Kevin. She hadn't had to carry that weight. Hadjin had carried it for her, taking the burden onto himself. "I hate that you're right," she whispered, the words catching in her throat. "I know, and I hate that I'm relieved Kevin's dead. That's human. That's normal." His hand rose, cupping her face gently. "Being glad a threat is gone doesn't make you a monster. It makes you someone who values her own survival. But you killed him. For me. I'd kill 1,000 men for you. Simple, certain, terrifying. I'd burn the whole world to the ground if it meant keeping you safe. That's what love looks like in my world. Megan. It's not flowers and sonnets. It's blood and sacrifice and making sure the person you love never has to carry a weight they can't bear." She looked up at him, at this man who'd orchestrated her entire life, who'd lied to protect her conscience, who loved her in the most screwed-up way possible, and realized, with a jolt, that she loved him back. Not despite the darkness, but because he carried it so she didn't have to. "Don't lie to me again," she said finally, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. "I can't promise that. Honest to the end? If the truth would destroy you, I'll lie every single time. But I promise you this. I'll never make you complicit in violence you don't choose. That's yours to control. Always." It wasn't the promise she wanted to hear, but it was the promise he could keep. "The message," she said, pulling herself back to the task at hand. "Someone's threatening us. Former NSA. They have information about both of us." His expression shifted, transforming into something cold and calculated. "Thomas Sterling. You know him? I've been monitoring NSA chatter since Kevin's death. He said your name came up twice. Once attached to a security breach, once to a buried investigation. Your father's old partner. The one who's been hunting him for 12 years. He pulled up a file on her screen, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Surveillance photos, background intel, communication intercepts. He found Kevin's body, started digging, connected you to me, connected your father's code to the virus. How much does he know? Everything." His voice was grim. "And he's not interested in money or power. He wants justice. Wants to expose the whole operation. Wants to see both of us in prison." Her mind raced, sifting through options, strategies, contingencies. "We can't kill him. He's NSA. His death would trigger investigations we can't contain." "Agreed. And we can't run. Our empire is too visible now, too established." "Also agreed. So what do we do?" A sharp, dangerous smile played on his lips. "We do what we do best. We make him see that exposing us destroys more than it saves. We make him choose between his justice and the greater good." "How?" "By showing him exactly what we've built and what falls apart if we fall." Thomas Sterling sat in the diner 3 blocks from their hotel, looking exactly as Megan remembered him from her father's old photos. Older now, his hair more gray than brown, but with the same sharp eyes that had probably seen too much. She slid into the booth across from him. Hadjin was nearby, a ghost at her back. But this conversation needed to be hers. "Mrs. Kim. Megan Anthony." His voice carried decades of disappointment, a weight of unspoken judgment. "The woman who chose a monster over her conscience. Call me whatever makes you feel righteous." She signaled the waitress for coffee. "You asked for this meeting. I'm here to talk. I know what you are, what you've become." He slid a folder across the table, the manila thick with accusations. "Money laundering, digital theft, accessory to murder. You helped Hajuan Kim build an empire on blood and stolen lives. I helped him build an empire on strategy and innovation." She didn't open the folder. "Everything we do has legitimate fronts, legal protections. We operate in gray areas, Sterling, not black ones. Kevin Park is dead. Executed. Kevin Park killed himself. There's an autopsy report. Falsified. I had independent analysis done. He leaned forward. You chose mercy. Let him live. And your husband murdered him anyway. The word husband from his lips sounded like an accusation. A condemnation. Kevin violated the terms of his exile, Megan said calmly, meeting his gaze. He threatened innocent people. He was dealt with by assassination by justice. You want to talk about justice, Sterling? Let's talk about the 47 children my father killed. The ones he's been running from for 12 years. Did you ever find out what happened to them? His jaw tightened, a muscle ticking in his cheek. I did. She continued, pressing the attack. I traced the operation. Found the intelligence that was verified by 3 separate sources. Except all 3 sources led back to one man, Senator Richardson Voss. He needed a terrorist incident to push his defense bill through Congress, so he manufactured one. Used my father's code to create a tragedy. That's not. It's all true and it's all documented. She pulled out her own folder, thick with financial transfers, communication logs, and Voss's personal journals detailing the operation. My father built the weapon, but Voss aimed it at children. Sterling's face went pale as he scanned the documents, his eyes darting back and forth across the page. Where did you get this? I'm very good at finding ghosts in machines. Her voice stayed level, betraying none of the emotion churning inside her. Voss has been operating for 20 years, using NSA assets to create crises he can solve. Your partner, the one who died in that car accident 5 years ago, Rebecca Chin. That wasn't an accident. That was Voss cleaning up a loose end who'd figured out his pattern. You're lying. I'm offering truth. Uncomfortable truth. She pushed the folder closer. Take it to your superiors. Expose Voss. Get actual justice for those 47 children and the dozens of others who died because one senator wanted power. In exchange for what? You leave us alone. Simple. Direct. You don't expose Hadjian's operations. You don't publish whatever exposé you're writing. You let us continue building what we've built. She pulled out a tablet and opened a secure file. Look at this. Really look. He scrolled through pages of data, his eyes narrowing. Financial reports, infrastructure projects, educational initiatives. What am I seeing? Our empire. She zoomed in on specific entries. Yes, we run operations that exist in legal gray areas. But look at what we fund with those profits. Hospitals in Manila, schools in Jakarta, tech training programs for underprivileged kids across Asia. We've pulled 3,000 families out of poverty in the last 6 months. Built infrastructure that governments ignored. Blood money. Money that saves lives. Her voice sharpened. You want to take us down? Fine. But understand what falls with us. Those hospitals close. Those schools shutter. Those families go back to desperation. Is that the justice you're after, Sterling? Trading our sins for their suffering? He stared at the screen, his expression conflicted, the moral battle playing out on his face. You're trying to manipulate me. I'm trying to show you reality. Megan leaned back. You see the world in black and white, good guys and bad guys, but we operate in gray, Sterling. We do terrible things that enable us to do extraordinary things. And yeah, maybe that's messed up. Maybe we're corrupt and broken and damned, but we're also the reason 3,000 kids have clean water and an education. That doesn't erase the crimes. No, but it complicates the justice. She finished her coffee. So here's my offer. Take down Voss. He's the real monster. He's the one using intelligence assets to murder innocents for political gain. Take him down and we'll help. Full access to our intelligence networks, resources, protection for you and any witnesses. And Hadjian Kim walks free. Hadjian Kim continues building an empire that, yes, exists in moral gray areas, but also saves actual lives. You get to be the hero who takes down a corrupt senator. We get to keep operating. Everybody wins except the people who actually deserve to lose. Sterling was quiet for a long moment, studying her face as if he could find the answers he was looking for there. hidden in the lines around her eyes. His jaw worked, torn between duty and disgust. "If even half of this is true," he muttered, almost to himself, "then justice isn't as clean as I wanted it to be." "You really believe you're doing good?" "I believe we're doing necessary." Her voice softened slightly, a hint of pleading entering her tone. "Look, I'm not asking you to approve of us. I'm not asking you to think we're heroes. I'm asking you to recognize that the world isn't as simple as you need it to be. Sometimes the monsters are the only ones willing to do what needs doing. That's a dangerous philosophy. It's a survivor's philosophy." She stood, pushing her chair back from the table. "You have 48 hours to decide. Expose us and watch those programs collapse, or take down Voss and let us keep building. Choose wisely, Sterling. Lives depend on it." She walked out of the diner, feeling his eyes burning a hole in her back. Hadjin fell into step beside her 3 blocks later, his hand finding the small of her back, offering silent support. "How did it go?" He's thinking. "That's all we can ask for. And if he chooses wrong?" Megan looked up at him, at this man who'd taught her that survival sometimes meant choosing the lesser evil. "Then we do what we always do. We adapt. We survive. We protect what's ours together. Always together." They walked through the neon-lit streets, 2 people who'd built an empire on darkness and found something like light in each other's shadows. The next day, Sterling sent a message. "I'm going after Voss. But Megan, this doesn't make you innocent. It just makes you necessary. Don't ever forget the difference." She wouldn't, because she'd learned that innocence was overrated. A naive dream. That being necessary meant carrying weight that crushed softer people, the moral cost of their actions. That loving a monster meant becoming one yourself, just a little, in the ways that mattered. But she'd also learned that monsters could build beautiful things, could save lives while destroying others, could love with a fierceness that transcended morality, a deep, abiding loyalty. 3 weeks later, Senator Voss was arrested. Somewhere between guilt and glory, they'd stopped searching for redemption and started building something that made sin feel useful, a twisted justification for their deeds. The news broke internationally. Corruption, conspiracy to commit murder, abuse of intelligence assets. Sterling got his hero moment, the accolades and recognition he craved. Hadjin and Megan got their continued operations, their empire secured. And somewhere in Buenos Aires, Marcus Anthony read the news and understood that his daughter had become someone he'd never imagined. Someone powerful enough to negotiate with the righteous. Someone dark enough to make those negotiations succeed. Someone who'd stopped apologizing for surviving, a force to be reckoned with. That night, Megan stood at their windows overlooking the Han River, the city lights reflecting in the dark water. Hadjin's arms wrapped around her from behind, a familiar comfort, and she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the peace of innocence, that was long gone, but the peace of acceptance, of coming to terms with who she had become. She'd crossed every line she'd sworn to protect, become everything she'd feared, chosen darkness over light, obsession over safety, power over purity. And she'd do it all again without hesitation. Because the alternative, being invisible, powerless, drowning, that was the real death. This was living dangerously, darkly, deliberately. "What are you thinking?" Hadjin murmured against her neck, his breath warm on her skin. For once, there were no ghosts in the room, no echoes of past violence, no coded messages hidden in the shadows, no blood between them. "That I love you. Simple, true, terrifying. That I'd choose you 1,000 times over. That I'm finally exactly who I was meant to be." "And who's that?" She turned in his arms, meeting his eyes, seeing the darkness and the light within him. "Your equal, your partner, your queen. The woman who sees you completely and chooses you anyway." His smile was slow, devastating, genuine, a rare display of true emotion. "Then let's rule our kingdom, clever girl. Together, together." She agreed, and meant it with every dark, twisted, brilliant part of her soul. Because some love stories were written in flowers and sonnets, but theirs was written in code and blood and unbreakable devotion. And it was perfect, a twisted masterpiece. Outside, the city glowed amber against glass and steel, the same color as the night they met, but now it reflected her crown instead of his shadow. End of script.